Absolutely. Okay, absolutely. We'll do that.
So my name is Bola Odetokun. I'm the CEO and founder of Parenting Resources and Initiatives. It was started sometimes in 2012, and basically we provide resources to families, parents, and youth alike, especially people of color and immigrants, because we understand that these categories of people have, I don't want to use a word that is politically incorrect, but for many of us, we still try to understand the system. And we found out that if parents don't even understand the system, there's no way they can help their youth. There's no way they can help their young children adapt and adjust and thrive in the system. So our core mission is to help families. We do seminars, we do calls like this, sometimes we actually do in-house visits to help at-risk youth. Sometimes it's communication between parents and children, and we also have some specialized resources, like we have counselors, we have therapists that volunteer their services from time to time to help us when the need arises. So that's basically what PRI does. Bola Odetokun, I'm an IT person. I'm an Oracle database administrator. I've been in that field in the US for over 14 years now. I've worked with top IT consulting firms, but I currently work with General Motors. I have 2 young adult children who are doing well by the grace of God, and they are part of my journey. They call me to order every now and then, and I'm glad that I have them in my life. I wouldn't do it another way. There's no child that is perfect. There's no youth that is perfect, but we have to always strive to understand them and be in their corner. To the extent that we can understand them, that's how we can help them, And I've written many articles on parenting and family issues, and I do seminars across the US, Canada, and Nigeria. So your host for today, I have a distinguished panel with me here today, and I'm going to start introducing them. Attorney Lawrence Lewis. I'm not going to read through the entire bio, but he used to live in New York City. He did his undergrad from Pace University. He graduated in 1989 with a degree in marketing and psychology, and then he did grad school at New York University. He has worked in several areas. He has worked as an investigator for the New York Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children. He also he completed his coursework at New York University in the fall of 1991 and attended the officers' basic course in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, before starting at Cornell. During the winter recess of his first year at Cornell, he also completed his dissertation for grad school, and he was awarded his master's degree in philosophy in May of 1993. 2 years later, he graduated from Cornell Law School. After graduation, he accepted a position as an assistant district attorney at the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, where he spent 3 years as a prosecutor. His 3 years was spent prosecuting thousands of misdemeanors, conducting thousands of preliminary hearings for felony cases, and hundreds of felony bench trials. In July 2020, he and his wife will celebrate their 29th wedding anniversary. You deserve an applause for that. They have been blessed with 2 boys, Alexander, who is 18, and Andrew, who is 15. Please welcome Attorney Lawrence Lewis. Thank you. Next person is Professor Jonathan Rappin. Professor Jonathan Rappin is currently a law professor at Atlanta's John Marshall Law School. He attended the University of Chicago and received his BA. He then went on to attend grad school at Princeton University and obtained his MPA. After graduate school, he decided to go to law school and attended George Washington University Law School in 2007. He served as the training chief for the Orleans Public Defender Program. working to rebuild New Orleans Public Defender Office in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. In the 10 years prior to his work in New Orleans, he served in the public defenders offices of Georgia and Washington, D.C., developing and implementing public defender training programs and handling a caseload of serious felonies. Something that I would really like to highlight about Professor Rappin is the fact that he founded the Gideon's Promise, which is featured in the award-winning HBO documentary Gideon's Army. Professor Rappin's organization, the Gideon's Promise, partnered with the Maryland Office of Public Defender, and the partnership will help the OPD to improve the quality of representation in that state. This is a huge program, and for which he has also won an award. He was named a 2014 MacArthur Foundation, this is a bit tiny, Genius Award, Genius Fellow for the impact his nonprofit organization, the Gideon's Promise, has made on society. The MacArthur Fellow Program awards unrestricted fellowships to talented individuals who have shown extraordinary originality and dedication in their creative pursuits and a marked capacity for self-direction. Please welcome with me today Professor Jonathan Rappin. Thank you. The next person is Dr. Gway. He's the founder of Brothers Making Moves, which is considered a revolutionary movement. He is currently a professional school counselor at Lanier High School, and he's the founder, I already said, he's the founder of Brothers Making Moves organization. He's been a school counselor for 18 years in both New Jersey school system and the Gwinnett County school system. He's a professional, His professional experience includes working as a counselor for young men in the prison system, and then in New Jersey. And he also works as a family advocate for the Juvenile Justice Commission of New Jersey. And he runs several mentoring programs for youths and men in Gwinnett County and New Jersey area. Dr. Gway is married to his beautiful wife, Kia, and they have three sons. In his spare time, he enjoys playing and coaching basketball, reading and volunteering, and his time in various humanitarian causes. Please welcome with me, Dr. Bobby. The next person is Coach D, as is popularly called. He's certified mentor, life coach, and basketball player development trainer. He's a 2019 Humanitarian Award recipient. He co-founded a nonprofit organization called Here to Help in 2006. Age to Age Incorporated serves about 20,000 people a year through various programs and initiatives. You can see more information on their website, Age to Age, or Here to Help. Welcome with me, Coach D. And we have two moderators today, Joshua Elbaz and Albert Thompson. Joshua was born in Atlanta, Georgia in March of 1991. He grew up in Lawrenceville, and he's the middle of three children, and tragically lost his older brother, Brendan, in September 2011. And he also recently lost his younger brother, Alex, in February of this year. These tragedies have further pushed Joshua to pursue a career in criminal defense to provide underprivileged people an opportunity for a second chance at life. Joshua attended high school at North Gwinnett High School in Suwanee, Georgia, and he graduated in May 2009. He then attended Georgia Gwinnett College in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and majored in business administration. He's currently a rising 2L law student at Atlanta's John Marshall Law School, where he's currently has taken a keen interest in criminal defense. Joshua is currently interning with attorney Lawrence Lewis, you see the connection, where he's hoping to obtain as much knowledge as he can while gaining practical skills in trial work and criminal proceedings. He enjoys watching and playing basketball, tennis, and boxing. Joshua is a remarkable young man who has gone through a lot, and he could have used those, tragedies as the excuse, for misbehaving. but it's noteworthy that he's got his life on the right path and is actually looking to use those experiences to help, his generation and other people. Please welcome with me Joshua Elbert. Next person is Albert Thompson. Albert was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. He completed his 4 years of undergraduate at Furman University, where he received his Bachelor of Science in Neuroscience. Albert comes from a science background, but has always had an underlying interest in law. Prior to attending John Marshall Law School, he spent time working in the medical field. He hopes to practice medical malpractice litigation, representing those that have been catastrophically injured. Albert and Joshua will be moderating the event today, and I will just be in the background facilitating. Again, you're all welcome to this event. We hope you learn a lot. Like Maya Angelou said, when people know better, they will do better. We hope you would go away from this event today with a lot of information, with a lot of insight that we can all turn around and use for our society, for our communities. I'm turning it over now to Joshua. In the course of the meeting, please feel free to post your questions in the chat room. Basically, send it to me, Bola Odetokun, or to Parenting Initiatives, and we'll pick them, intermittently. Thank you, and have a nice time. We're glad to have you here. Over to you, Joshua.
Yes. Said that the host had stopped the video. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Joshua, go ahead and start it over.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It says that cannot start the video, host has disabled.
Okay, let's find you, Joshua. All right, how about that? Pop-up.
Perfect.
Okay.
There we go.
The goal was to spotlight you. Now, there you go. Welcome, Joshua.
All right. First, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's joining us here on live, YouTube and Zoom. I worked really hard to try to put this event together with the Parenting Initiative, and I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today. Me and my colleague Albert, as she previously stated, we're both currently Rising 2L law students. So the way that the panel is going to work is we're going to go ahead and just ask certain questions to individuals, more of a team pattern. So like, there's going to be certain questions that I'm going to have directed towards Attorney Mr. Lewis and Professor Jonathan Rapping. And then Albert will go ahead and ask certain questions for Dr. Bobby Gway and for Coach D. And then we're going to, obviously the questions are not just for those two individuals where this is a discussion. So we want to talk, we want to cross conversations here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and ask the first question that's going to be directed towards Lawrence Lewis and Professor Rapping. I want to start with you, Mr. Lewis. The first question I want to ask you is what do you believe the role of the criminal justice system is today?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Fantastic. This is what I'll tell you. The criminal justice system has its own idea of what's supposed to happen in the criminal justice system. So I would say in law school, you learn that there is retribution, punishment, general deterrence, specific deterrence. I would suspect that if you speak to the judges and you speak to the prosecutors, I would suspect that they would indicate to you that the system itself is meant to address general deterrence, to the extent that if a person is prosecuted, it would serve as notice to other people of what behavior would ultimately be acceptable, what behavior would not be acceptable. I suspect they also might say that it would be a specific deterrent to the extent that a person would be in custody, and hopefully that being in custody would show them that ultimately they need to change their behavior. For me, having worked 5 years as a prosecutor, 20 years as a defense attorney, the system for me is really just a way of dealing with dysfunction that has gone past a certain point. I probably represented about 4,000 clients over the last 20 years. And those cases break down into one of three areas. Number one, drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol probably touch about 70% of the cases that I'm involved in. Doesn't matter what the charge is, murder, burglary, armed robbery, drugs and alcohol is there. Another 25% is most of the defendants are men. I'm with the wrong woman. I have beer money and she has champagne tastes. And so I have to do some other things to try to make up the difference between what I can give her and the type of person she is, or what it is that I think that she needs. That last 5%, that's mental health. The interesting thing about mental health is I would say half of the mental health problems, drug and alcohol related, half of the mental health problems come from me being with the wrong woman too long. So I would say a lot of the criminal justice system, when you start talking about even mental health, organic mental health is probably a very small percentage in terms of what I've seen, drugs and alcohol, and I'm just not with the person that I need to be with. And so the criminal justice system is addressing the dysfunction of the alcohol and drug use. It's addressing the dysfunction of you being with the wrong person. And that's what I see as being really the role of the criminal justice system. They're dealing with that. That's what they're dealing with. So if as my 15-year-old said when he was 12 inside the QT, so if I don't drink drugs and alcohol and I marry the right woman, I won't ever be in the criminal justice system. That's pretty much it. That's it in a nutshell. No drugs and alcohol, marry the right woman, you won't be in the criminal justice system.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And I want to redirect that same question to Professor Rapping for you to be able to answer that and also for a rebuttal if necessary.
Well, let me first say I'm really honored to be here in this space with you all. I appreciate Attorney Lewis's response. I don't know if I'd say it's rebuttal. I have a different view, but that's why you have various panelists. Look, we have some democratic ideals. We have ideals we teach in law school. We have ideals about what justice means, about what due process looks like. We ideally strive for equal justice that is applied in a manner that doesn't discriminate based on income and race. In reality, our criminal justice system looks nothing like those ideals. So if you ask what our criminal justice system is supposed to do, I think I would answer it like this. I'm a parent. I have two children, a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old. I have rules in my house and I expect my children to follow the rules. And when they don't follow the rules, there are consequences. I don't even like to say punishment. I say there are consequences. And my wife and I designed consequences to try to ensure that our children continue to grow as healthy, productive, contributing human beings. We never designed consequences that are meant to crush our children, cripple our children, render them unable to have meaningful lives. And I believe our criminal justice system ideally would be a system that treats every person's children the way we would treat our own. In reality, we have a criminal justice system that is really almost reserved exclusively for poor people. 80% of the people charged with crimes in America are so poor they qualify for court-appointed lawyers. In many places, that means they are living below the poverty line. Disproportionately, people in the criminal justice system are Black and brown people. You are 6 times more likely, all else being equal, to end up in the criminal justice system if you are Black than if you're white. And the system really is a system that applies very punitive responses to our most marginalized communities. So my work is building a community of public defenders to try to transform the criminal justice system, because I think when you work with communities impacted, and as public defenders, we work exclusively with the lowest income members of society, what you really learn is that we have not figured out as a society how to deal with all of the problems that plague marginalized communities, whether it's substance abuse, illiteracy, homelessness, mental health. All of those challenges are addressed in America in our criminal justice system. Right? It is the one place we have to deal with those issues. So I'll wrap up by saying this. I really think that we as a nation have embraced a 400-year narrative that says some people are less human. We see uprisings going on across the nation over the last couple weeks because that narrative that says some people aren't human have led to violent killings in the streets that have been captured on videotape. But the thing that I think is important to remember is that for every police killing that happens on the street that's captured on videotape, tens of thousands of people survive encounters with police, end up in the criminal justice system, and are subjected to a routine violence in the courts that is not captured on video, that's not flashed across CNN, that is going on invisibly, where they are put in cages pre-trial because they're too poor to make money bond. They are overcharged. They are coerced into pleading guilty. Less than 5% of the cases in our criminal justice system ever even have a trial, despite the fact that that is the vehicle the founders envisioned to ensure justice was done. So I will end by saying I think we have a long way to go to ultimately realize the democratic promise of equal justice in America.
Thank you, Professor Rappin. I just have a follow-up question. Obviously, we want to keep the conversation moving and have Dr. Gway have an opportunity as well as Coach D. Dr. Rappin, or Professor Rappin, excuse me. The one question that I do have, just to follow up on your answer, is why do you believe that it is that only 5% of criminal defendants ever go to jury trials? Why do you think it is that they never make it to a jury trial?
Well, because we have an ideal. And that ideal is that justice will be determined through a process that includes lawyers and juries and trials. And then we have a reality. And the reality is we punish much more behavior than we're willing to pay to handle justly. And so there is pressure to process large volumes of cases. We call them cases. We don't even call them human beings. Large volumes of cases quickly and efficiently. And in an effort to do that, prosecutors have found ways to use tools like overcharging, pretrial detention, the threat of harsh punishment to essentially, I would argue, coerce people. The cost of going to trial can be so great that many people just forgo that right because they feel like they have no other option. Plea bargaining is the way we have learned to deal with huge volumes of cases that we're not willing to address consistent with our founders' ideals.
Thank you. And a quick response if you want, Mr. Lewis, 30 seconds to that. I gotta be able to give opportunities to everyone. I'm sorry.
I understand. Part of this process is me actually listening to what Professor Rappin is saying rather than forming a response. And so I like to listen to what Professor Rappin is saying. I'm sort of in it. I've been in it for 20 years. If I go see 200 people at the jail today or this year, 199 will say that they're innocent. And if you're innocent, you're going to have a jury trial, which is why I'm going to drop so many speedy trial demands. I'm not going to sit around. I love what he said, coerced into pleading guilty. I'm not coercing anybody into pleading guilty. If you say you're innocent, I'm going to drop a speedy trial demand. I typically drop about 50 a year, but those 50 speedy trial demands still only turn into 15 trials. Why? Because when the jury is standing outside, people realize, wait a minute, this game of chicken that I'm playing with the prosecutor is probably not going to work. You see, the prosecutor's overcharging, I got that, but the defendants are also playing a little game where they don't want to accept any accountability for what they've done either. Because I don't think the police on 200 arrests, all of my cases, 199 they got wrong, come on. So I like dropping speedy trial demands, and then when people realize, wait a minute, this cat is really gonna take me to trial, they come to the realization of what's going on, and then we start talking like we got some sense.
Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Lewis. Albert, I'm going to hand it over to you for the next question.
All right, thank you, Josh. So this next question is going to be directed towards Dr. Bobby Gway and Mr. Daryl Richardson. We're going to start with a more broad question of just what do you think it means to be a man in today's society, especially when you're facing obstacles, and typical struggles that you might see, such as the criminal justice system?
All right, I guess I can jump in first. And again, to Josh, and the rest of the panelists, the organizers, I want to say indeed is a blessing and an honor to be on here with you all. Excuse my voice. I've been doing a lot of yelling and screaming in the last few weeks, so I'm trying to still, get my voice together. But that question is indeed a broad one. But the way I will address it first is I feel that there's been kind of a watered down version and definition of what a man should be or what a man is in today's society. I'm originally from Africa. I was born in Liberia, West Africa, and came into this country in '85. And I remember vividly my father speaking in regards to our tribe. I come from a tribe called the Bassa tribe. And one of the traditions in that tribe, you all have heard about the rites of passage. That rites of passage was something that was very, very evident in our tribal traditions. In the African tradition, they would take boys around the age of 10, 11, the elder men in the village would take them into the hinterland sometime up to a month or so. And during that time, those young men would go through a mind, body, and spiritual transformation. And when they go through that transformation, they return back to the village, signifying they have gone through their rites of passage. Now they can come back to their village, to their community, to their families, and pour back into their families, in their village, in their society. We don't have that rites of passage today as a community, as a nation, as a world. We may have segments of even on the continent of Africa now, that tradition is now being watered down. We're losing that now. So that definition of what a man is has been watered down. So at this point, I see three things that I do when I'm working with my young men. I tell them that as a man, you're responsible for three things. Number one, your spirituality, your faith, whatever you want to call it, or whatever God or whatever you profess, that belief system in a higher power, whatever it is, that's your number one commitment. Number two, your family. Your family is the next obligation and responsibility as a man. And whatever you do to pour and lead your family in providing them those skills, those values, and those morals that would then take them to the next level and be productive citizens. And lastly, there's the obligation of community. So when I speak to my young men, I tell them is your faith, your family, and community. And anything else after that, they can fight for the next position after that. But it's those three things I feel that men and the concept of a man today should hold true to themselves, hold themselves responsible for those three aspects of life. So I can pause right there and let my brother, Coach D, kind of chime in.
So, Mr. Richardson, if you care to take as well.
Absolutely. Certainly want to echo the sentiments of everyone, Bobby, Mr. Lewis, the moderators, the host. Certainly want to echo the sentiments of everyone who have taken the time to be a part of this and put this together. I think that's a multifaceted question, obviously. And I'd also think it depends on who you're speaking to, who you're asking that question to. I think the concept of a man for many, as Mr. Gway spoke on, it means more for people of an older age, right? It varies if you're talking about age demographic. Me almost being 40 years old, that message and that meaning of a man or male is going to vary from someone who's in their early 20s. And partly because of what Mr. Gway spoke on as it relates to traditions being passed down. And we can speak on a litany of reasons on why those traditions have not been passed down. For me, as well as you look at the racial demographic, if you look at the racial demographic and you ask a Caucasian male or possibly an Indian male, an Asian or Hispanic male, that answer may also vary based on the racial disparity, right? Because of certain cultures and because of certain historical things that have taken place that are passed down or may not be passed now. So specifically speaking for me, there are also 3 principles that I abide by as a man, as a male. I focus on leadership, I focus on providing, and I focus on protecting, right? So those are the 3 pillars for me as a man. When I see men, specifically Black men, who are doing those 3 things. And when I say lead, obviously that provides context, right? So I'm talking about leading in a positive manner. So when I think of a man or a male, someone who's positively leading their family, who's positively leading their community, someone who's providing and protecting for their family as well as their community. All right. So I think generally speaking of a male, speaking of a man, I think those things have been diluted. And has been somewhat of a paradigm shift for, again, a litany of reasons. We can speak, I know we have Officer Lawrence and Professor Rapp. And by the way, I just want to say, I think I just fell in love with Mr. Rapp as he was speaking. So I love you, man. Like that was some great stuff. So that was really good. But I think if you ask, also, you can look at the judicial system for a lot of the reasons for why Black leaders or Black males are not where they are, right? Like I think you have to look at the judicial system. I think you have to look at the economic disparity. I think you even also have to go back to slavery and things that have happened since we've been here. And I'm specifically speaking about Blacks and Black people. So I can speak on that for a much longer time, but to try to be as quickly and as candid as I possibly can to answer your question directly. For me, it's leadership. For me, it's providing. For me, it's protecting. And I think those things have been a shift. And I also think it depends on who you're asking from a racial demographic as well as from an age demographic.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. We can go back to Joshua if you want to follow up with some more questions for Professor.
Sure. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Coach D, for a great response. Thank you, Dr. Gway. I'm going to start with you, Professor Rapping, for this next question, then we'll flip it over to Attorney Lewis. Professor Rapping, specifically, what do you think that, this is going to be kind of a broader question, what do you think the impact that the educational and then criminal justice system has on each other, with those two directly correlating with each other? What do you think the impact of each other for those two things is? So basically, how does the educational system have an impact on, people that are going into the criminal justice system, and then vice versa?
So I want to say to Coach D, I love you too, man. And I'm actually just enjoying hearing all of the panelists because it's helpful to me. So one thing about me, I am obviously a white man raising a Black son. I have biracial children. And, I think I figured out probably when my son was about 6, that as I try to model what it means to be a man for my son, I can't model the way I move through the world because my son can't get away with things that I've grown up sort of understanding I could live through. So I no longer coast through stop signs when my son is in the car with me. If someone cuts me off, I don't, get into an argument with them or give them the finger. I don't jaywalk when my son is around because I understand I can live that way. He's a Black boy and he's not going to be able to survive that. There was a video of police in, I think it was Tulsa, Oklahoma, just a couple of days ago I saw, where 2 13-year-olds, a year older than my son, walking down the street in the middle of the street because there were no sidewalks. They got placed face down and handcuffed. And so you ask about the link between that and our education system. My son, when he was in 5th grade, he went to a predominantly white elementary school. He was the only Black boy in his class, and they had a substitute teacher. And he, along with the other kids, were sort of cutting up like 10-year-olds do. He was 10 at the time. And my son's a great kid. He plays a lot of sports. Coaches love him, but he's a 10-year-old. And so they were cutting up. And the substitute teacher singled him out and said, when you grow up, if you don't learn to behave, you're either going to end up in a gang, on drugs, or in jail. Now, my son's grown up around public defenders. He knew exactly what that meant. My wife was an educator for years before she joined me in starting Gideon's Promise. But I think what that tells me is the way we view Black children, and particularly Black boys in the school system, oftentimes can be a pipeline into the criminal justice system. Last thing I'll say is my daughter's 15. She's a rising junior at Grady High School. She's part of a community of Black high school students in Atlanta called Teens Looking for Change. And they are pushing, they're out rallying, they're out speaking because they understand that the children in their peer group are at greater risk than the kids who grew up in Buckhead and Morningside. So it's a pipeline, and I think you're right to make that link.
Great response. Great response. I love it. Mr. Lewis, do you have any thoughts on that question?
I fell in love with education real early. And when I say I fell in love with education, I fell in love with, I suspect, the competition of education, not necessarily the classes and spending the money. Obviously, I spent all of my 20s in school. It's sort of interesting as I listen to Professor Rapping. Professor Rapping comes at it from a sort of institutional, systematic standpoint, and I come at it from a more individual standpoint. So one of the things that's sort of odd to me is listening to prosecutors who are a part of the system talk about the system like there's something separate from the system. For me, there is not the system. I'm part of the system. I'm part of it. So if the criminal justice system is not working, it's somehow my fault. So I don't want to add any dysfunction to the criminal justice system, which is why I said earlier, I'm not going to coerce anybody into ultimately entering any plea. So my answer to this question about education and the criminal justice system really almost goes back to the question about what is it to be a man? I'm in the middle of the plant paradox right now. And one of the things that the author suggests is that if you feed chickens fish, the meat tastes like fish and not chicken. And that's what I think it is to be a man. Being a man is being conscious of what you're feeding yourself. If you go to school and the teacher's not teaching you math, and I know they're not teaching you math, you have a responsibility to get on YouTube and learn the math yourself. You have a responsibility to go online and learn the material yourself, as opposed to the 6 or 7 hours on the YouTube just watching videos, or the 6 and 7 hours on unsocial media. I think you have some sort of obligation. Oftentimes what happens in my job, we go out to the jail. Obviously, you've been out to the jail with me. Clients will say something like, you and me are the same. You and me are the same. Well, we're sort of the same. I really have put an emphasis on education. I put an emphasis on education too. Okay, then you should have no problem with this problem right here. 1/2 plus 1/3 equals. What's the most popular answer? 1/5. That's wrong. 2/5. That's still wrong, sir. 2/6. That's wrong also. So how does a person exercise judgment when they don't have the basics? We're talking about 4th grade fractions now. How does a person exercise judgment about what I should do in a criminal case when I'm looking at discovery, when I don't have the foundation of logic? Math is the foundation of logic. If I don't have 1/2 plus 1/3 and I'm 23, it's difficult for me to believe that I can weigh the evidence in the case and actually come up with what decision I should make in terms of going forward or not going forward. But the beauty is I'm innocent, so I'm going to trial. That's it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you both. That was a very important lead up to what we're going to be talking about soon. I'm going to go ahead and pass that next question on to Albert.
Thank you, Josh. This question is for Dr. Gway and Mr. Richardson as well. For students that have had trouble in their home environment, what are some of the things that you try to teach to prevent them from using their situation at home as an obstacle or excuse from their success in the classroom?
Coach D, you can jump on this first, brother.
Great question. Albert, and great responses by Mr. Rapping. Being someone who interacts with, at very minimal, 250 kids a day, I often try to have them to cling on to something that's motivating to them. Obviously, there have been detrimental and very tough obstacles presented, adverse situations. Everyone struggles with something. Could be an economic adverse situation. It could be poverty. It could be mental and emotional challenges. It could be of various things that people deal with. I often have them cling to something that's going to motivate them. If you aspire to attain certain goals, let's actually have a plan of action to attain those goals. Oftentimes, kids, I ask my kids, my mentees, or my basketball players, what are your goals? What do you want to be? And they'll tell me NBA, they'll tell me a scientist, they'll tell me whatever the answer is. Well, my thing is, what is the actual plan in getting to what you're saying that you want to be? Because we can often say what we want, but realistically, when trying to execute a plan, we're not actually going through the steps to make that a reality. So I often talk to them about things that are motivating to them and having a realistic goal in order to attain those things that they're setting forth for themselves. It's not only talking about wanting to be in the NBA. It's not only talking about it. It's not only giving mere rhetoric about these things. I try to use various motivational tactics with being able to help them get to where they're trying to go. Now, what's key into those things are actually having the relationship, right? Like we have to, I think everyone here is probably fully invested in what they're trying to do with the children or the people that they're impacting. We would assume that everyone here is not just here because of a paycheck. We would assume that people are actually, excuse me, invested in the betterment of the people that we deal with. So with that being said, we have to establish and cultivate real relationships to know what's going to help benefit their situation. We can't just be hyperbole. It can't just be rhetoric that we're talking. We have to actually understand them. There has to be some level of symbolism. There has to be some believability in what we're saying. As me and Mr. Gway, who deals with children often, they have to be some believability in what we're saying and that we truly care. So one of the things that I do is I try to make them cling on to something that's going to help motivate them and also be realistic in the goals that they're trying to attain, although they're dealing with adverse situations.
Yeah, my brother. Definitely great points, man. And I echo a lot of what you're saying, being in the trenches with these young people. One of the critical things Coach D said is the relationship piece. Because if we don't know the narrative and the story of individual students, right? Individual students, and that's taking the time to listen to them. Oftentimes, adults and elders in this village that we're in, we want to tell these young people how to go, how to navigate, and how to get out of a situation, instead of truly listening to them, sometimes for what they're not saying. Listen for what they're saying, but sometimes we have to listen to also those things that they're not saying. We have parents for years, being a parent. I have 3 boys. One is in the Army right now. He's 25 years old, and I have 2 more coming up. And we know the natural transition of young people is they begin to leave us a little bit more and have more autonomy and with their friends and their peer groups. So here's where that transition and that impact comes. How can I then impact this young person and still be that voice of reasoning for them? When we have young people in our schools, for me as a counselor for over 18 years, when a student is going through their trials, going through some of those hard times, my first thing I ask them is, what do you want to see happen? What do you really want to see happen? And then for me, that kind of gives me a gauge of where they are emotionally. Are they able to really get that grit and that resiliency to be able to deal with the situation, for them to be able to deal with whatever life trials that they're going through and push through? Because if I can ask them where they want to go, at least they can begin to empower themselves and say, you know what, I can do that. Secondly, is actually showing them where they can go. And have been mentored for over 20 years. And one of the key pieces of mentoring young men particularly in the juvenile system as well as in schools that are typically left in the margins, is exposing them. So we do a lot of exposure. If it means taking them to college visits, if it means bringing men in like our dear brother Lawrence and brother Rapping to speak to them, exposing them to things that they haven't seen or they haven't experienced. I think those things we continue to do, we continue and give them the reality. Despite my situation I'm in now, there is something down the line. And now somebody that cares, not just telling me about it, they're showing me about it. So I think those are key components of really uplifting and building the resiliency in our young people, when they're going through any kind of trials, as we impact them and work with them.
Thank you, Dr. Gway. Josh?
Yeah, so
thanks. And Josh, real quick, and that was a little plug for Rapping and Lewis. So I'm going to be calling on y'all to speak to my young man.
Oh, that's fine. Dr. Gway, let me tell you a little secret. 20 years, I may get an invitation once every 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I speak well, but I suspect I say things that people don't necessarily want to hear in the way that they want to hear it. Professor Rapping says he doesn't, he drives differently to show his boys sort of like the best driving behavior. I do the exact opposite. I'm a speeder. So my children have been stopped in the car with me 3 or 4 or 5 times with the officers. Yeah. And I show them how to talk to an officer. Yeah. Do you know why I stopped you? Yes, I do know why you stopped me. I'm a speeder. Right, that's what it is. And so I'm not going to sit here and play this game. No, I don't know why you stopped me. You stopped me because I'm black. Sir, I couldn't even tell you were black. You were doing 30 miles over the speed limit. What are you talking about? You're black. Get out of here. So I have to show the boys how to talk to the officer. Do you understand?
Absolutely.
There's no marijuana wafting out the car. The license, registration, and insurance is in order. And I'm going to talk very politely and respectfully to the police officer. When he says something crazy, like all the lanes are equal, that's what he said coming south on 75. Sir, they're not all equal. The left lane's the passing lane. That's why they say slower traffic, keep to the right. It's a passing lane. So my children can see me engage with the police officer. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not going to just let you tell me anything, but I'm not going to be disrespectful. And at no time am I going to be arguing. I'm going to be following directions. So I'm sort of the opposite. I need you to see how to interact with police. You are going to have contact with police.
And I love that. And I want that. In the work that Coach D would tell you, the work we do with with our young men, we absolutely want that. But let me just point out why, and you can even respond to this. I know we're going over the script, but I can't pass this option out. Why do you feel comfortable and confident speaking like that? Because of knowledge, the knowledge you've gained, the knowledge and the experience that you've gained over time, your experiences. You had to do some studying to get to that point to be able to speak like that. So for our young men,
I sort of disagree. Let me say this. Let me say this. I started with the phrase, in order to be a man, you have to be conscious of what you're feeding yourself.
Absolutely.
I had to leave home at 20. So my mother might say I left. I might say she put me out. That's not important. 20, I had to go because I didn't want what she was feeding me. She loved me. She loved me. She appreciated me, but I didn't want what she was feeding me. And if I don't want what she's feeding me, I got to go someplace else and get what it is I think I should be eating. We're not talking about 54 now. We're talking about 18, 19, 20.
Right.
I had an understanding of what it's going to be. I'm going to die one day. But what's not going to happen is I'm not going to die 50 times because I'm scared to do this and scared to do that, scared to go here, scared to go there. Yes. I see Coach D wants to chime in.
Yes, awesome. I love the dialogue. And Alex, guys, we apologize, but I want to take the opportunity as well, Mr. Gway, to ask Mr. Lawrence. So when you're giving your children these teachable moments of knowing how to properly conduct themselves, the proper etiquette, so on and so forth, is that the solution to no longer Black people being killed and mistreated? Is that the ultimate solution?
No, of course
Okay.
not. No.
Okay.
Listen. I don't know how they're going to die. I don't know how they're going to die. In my mind, if I look at the statistics and where I operate, I'm either going to die at the hands of a Black man or I'm going to die wrapped around a tree. I don't think I'm going to die at the hands of a police officer. I'm talking about where I go. I go into rough neighborhoods. I go knocking on doors looking for witnesses that they say I'm never going to find. I go looking for Peanut and Black because you say they're alibi witnesses, and then they tell me that they're not alibi witnesses. I go chase them because I drop 50 speedy trial demands a year, and you're going to trial. If Black has information, he's at the strip club, I'm going to the strip club to find Black so that he can come to court and say that you were with him in Albany when they believe that you were here in Lawrenceville. I'm going to do it. I don't know if anybody else is going to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm not sitting around worrying about dying. I'm worrying about living. I want to be the person that says I have had a positive, productive impact on the system as an individual. I'm not looking for the system to change. I'm part of the system, and I've got to try to make the system work the way that it's supposed to. And for me, that's jury trials. For me, that's jury trials. I'm not coercing nobody into taking a plea. For me, that ultimately is jury trials. And when I hung a shingle 20 years ago, I said that. I'm not forcing anybody to take a plea. You want a trial, you're going to have a trial. And let's be clear, that means that I have at least 60 losses. How many cases do you win? I have at least 60 losses because 5 times a year, a person that makes a full confession on DVD, they decide they can't take the punishment. So I have to go to trial and get punched in the mouth for like 3 or 4 days, because at the end of the 4th day, the jury's going to watch them on DVD say, yeah, I shot her in the face. I don't know why we're at trial. We're at trial because they can't take the punishment. Okay.
Some great dialogue, guys. I know everybody wants, this is some great dialogue. I know everybody wants a chance to speak, but we're going to move on to the next question because it's time. I know everyone's smiling, everyone wants to talk. It's great. This is great. And this question is going to be, I'm going to start off with Dr. Gway on this question, because I want each panelist to be able to answer this question specifically. And I want to just kind of remind everybody, I'm not trying to place any restrictions on time, but I just want to be able to give everybody an opportunity to speak so that we can get through the whole program here. So let's try to limit our responses to 30 to 45 seconds if we can. If you do go a little bit over, that's fine, but let's just have a little bit of courtesy for everybody here that's wanting to speak. So this next question is, I want to start off with you, Dr. Wade, because you deal with this at the front lines when you are at the high school level. Do you think that Black leadership should take a position on the musical genre, gangster rap, hip hop, all of these, rappers and artists that seem to be promoting, violence, Black on Black crime, different criminal aspects, and specifically for me, what I think is of most interest is glorifying drug culture, glorifying drug use and addiction in these hip hop songs. Because speaking from somebody who has dealt with individuals very, very close to me that have suffered tragedies from this, do you think that this has a direct impact on our youth at the high school level by them listening to it, as well as do you think that it should be addressed by Black leadership as something that should be condoned or promoted?
I know my brother Coach D is salivating on this one because we talk about this all the time. Man, we're gonna have to talk offline, but real quick, first off, Josh, all due respect, the narrative of Black on Black crime, I want that to be something that is dismantled, because it continues to perpetuate the legacy to put Black people dirty laundry out in the open. And you guys in the law criminal justice field, you guys know, white on white crime happen all the time. Latinx crime against Latinx crime happen all the time. But you never hear that narrative. You constantly hear Black on Black crime. So I have a huge problem with that. With that said, as far as the hip hop genre, I grew up in it. Black leaders have before jumped in to what they call gangster rap in the early 90s, I would say late 80s, when gangster rap was becoming a thing, right? And they try to squash the voice of the youth. If you know the history of rap and hip hop, it came out of the rebellious nature of young people who were the children of men and women that walked and marched and protested in the civil rights movement. So when we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s, these young people like, I'm not going out there marching and getting bit by my parents and getting hosed down. I'm not doing that no more. But I'm going to use this art form to speak what we see in our neighborhood. So that's what the culture came out of. Now, with the time, when you look at the history of the 80s and the early 90s, when the drug epidemic hit and so forth in these communities, they started to talk about what they were seeing. So every child, and the way I speak to them now, every child, every person have a decision to make, what they listen to, what come out of their mouth, and what actions they take in making that thing happen. You have white children who will listen to heavy metal and go shoot up a school. So as far as Black leaders taking a mantle into, confronting that, I don't think that's a Black leadership thing. I think that's a parent thing. That's something that parents need to be involved in, know what their children are listening to, and have those rules and things set in, and being able to have conversations with them as far as what they're listening to. Listen to some of the things they listen to, and kind of make the decision on, is that something that is a moral and value within your home? I think that's where the answer lies in dealing with that situation.
And just to respond to that, to be more specific for everyone else that wants to answer, I am a huge hip hop head, so I know, I'm very aware of the history that comes along with hip hop emerging in the late 80s, going into the early 90s. The specific, I should have been a little bit more specific. The real question is how did, I'm not specifically addressing people like Tupac, Nas, NWA, because when you listen to those lyrics, as you stated, they're talking about what they're seeing in their own communities, and they're being more taking an activist role when they're speaking in the music. And I like that kind of, but what the music that I don't like is listening to artists today who are talking about popping perks, taking Xanax, drinking. Oh, I have 3 girlfriends. That's more of what I'm talking about, is the emergence of how hip hop has evolved. And now how most children in today's society at the high school level are not necessarily listening to music from the late 80s and early 90s like myself, old school hip hop, but more of the new stuff that's coming out that's causing what I believe to be more drug use and more drug overdoses in children, because if they think that it's okay to do these types of drugs, then they're going to do them.
No, I mean, great point. And I absolutely, and again, for me, my perspective, I think that's the responsibility of parents. I firmly believe, even as educators working in the school, these young people are listening to, but not all of them are going out and popping pills and doing drugs, but they're still listening to the same music. So it becomes an individual decision that they have to make. So those morals and those values and those standards have to be set in the home. So you can listen to those things, but it's not going to determine what actions you're going to put forth.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to jump in right here and take a few questions from the participants. One is a comment and directed at Attorney Lewis, and I think the question is directed to him as well. So Ngozi says, let me quickly read that. It says, what the real issue is, why do they not? I think this is referring to the math equation that you gave, Attorney Lewis. The real issue is, why do they not get the half plus 1/3? What is the underlying issue that caused them to have no background? Could that be the contributor to why they ended up in jail? That's number one. That's the question. And the comment is regarding how you act at maybe police stops. It says, not all individuals, that's from King's Code. Not all individuals are in your position. Many individuals in poor neighborhoods are pulled over for no reason at all. Pretextual stops, I'm not sure I understand what that means. Pretextual stops are common in Black and underprivileged neighborhoods. Attorney Lewis, how do you respond to this question and the comments?
Okay, let me start with the first part. I think the question concerned fractions. I gave you the example of 1/2 plus 1/3. equals 1/5. And of course, I always like to save this little part for Dr. Gway. Sometimes when I go there and I ask them 1/2 plus 1/3, they look and look and look and look and look, and I say, okay, just read it to me. And this is what they read to me. You're going to have to write this down and make it make sense. They say N1 minus plus W1 minus 11. Do you get that? You got to write it down. They take the fraction and they turn it on its side and they read it like hieroglyphics. I think that's a problem. That's only happened one time. That's happened more than 4 or 5 times. A grown man, I don't deal with too many children, an adult, some of whom have a GED or a high school diploma, took a 4th grade fraction, turned it on its side, and read it like Chinese hieroglyphics. Now, that person is going to make a number of complaints to the state bar because he doesn't like how I'm talking to him and I have a bad bedside manner. His judgment's terrible. His judgment is, how can you build judgment or logic when you don't even recognize the math fraction as a math fraction? The issue, that's 4th grade. Typically, people don't start getting tracked and don't start losing interest in education until they hit 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. That's my understanding of education. So between kindergarten and 4th grade, they're sort of tracking. Somewhere around 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, they sort of get off a track. But there are too many resources online. There are too many, you can't go with the 30-year-ago argument, the schools suck. You can have the worst teacher at the front of the class because you're walking around with your personal tutor in your pocket. You don't have to worry about the teacher at the front of the class because you have your own tutor in your pocket on the issue of education. Let me go to the pretextual stop. A pretextual stop, basically, for bowling, for other folks that don't know, that's where the officers see your vehicle at a certain time of day or night, and they say they pull you over because it's a high crime area. Here's the most important thing you need to know about pretextual stops. The law says that they're legal. So you don't have to like it. There's a lot of things you might not like. The law says if my wife gets a TPO against me, I can't contact her. She can call me 50 times. And if I call her back 1 time, I'm going to get in trouble. You may not like that about the law, but that's what the law is. The law says I can't contact her. If she comes to my church, I got to get out of there. If she comes to the courthouse, I probably don't have to leave the courtroom. But other than that, I got to get out of there. I can't have contact with her. The issue of fairness, that's something else. Whether that's fair that she can contact me 50 times and I can't contact her 1 time, that's a separate issue. Are police going to pull over black men who drive a car that's too nice or too shiny or too raggedy? Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I don't want them to do when they pull the car over is search the car because they smell marijuana. I want your license, your insurance, and your registration to be in order. There's no odor of marijuana, so they have no reason to pull you out the car. Listen, in the end, there may be no way to stop any of this. But as I start going through all of the young men that's killed, what do they have in common? They're all black. That's true. They're all black. They all have some difficulty following instructions. I don't have any difficulty following instruction. It's a stupid instruction. The office is giving it. And they all have some kind of substance in their system. I don't want you to be high on no alcohol, marijuana. I want you to be clear-headed when you're dealing with the officer. Well, so what's that mean? How do I know when I'm gonna deal with the officer? Be clear-headed all the time. Oh my God, I can't drink. Yes, be clear-headed all the time. If you start to go through the last 10 years of who was clear-headed, you're going to see that number. What? How many people? 60%, 70%? I'm following the cases too. Guyton shot the dude in Texas. He was in his house. He didn't have any drugs in his system. The young man that got shot, I think in Ohio, that went to buy some s'mores, he didn't have any drugs in his system. But I'm keeping up with who has drugs in their system. And when you have drugs in your system, do you feel like you need to follow authority? Do you have a problem with authority? I got 2 sons. The 18-and-a-half-year-old, he sort of doesn't want to listen. I got to deal with that. But I'm not putting him in a car. Because if he can't close the linen closet door and he can't fold up his clothes and put them in a drawer and close the drawer, he's not going to listen to the officer on the street. So if you can't listen to me, I'm not going to put you behind the wheel so you can have more drama. So parents got to start getting real too. You know your children. You know your children. Does your son listen to you? No. Then don't put him in a car. What do you put him in? Because I don't want to drive him. He's not ready. Huh? From the iGen, 15 minus 3, he's 12. 21 minus 3, he thinks like an 18-year-old. He's just not ready. Stop pretending he's ready, giving him a car, releasing him to the street, and then saying, okay, you deal with him, officer. No, I don't want you, the officer, to deal with him. I want you to keep raising him until he's ready to be a man.
Thank you so much. And that sort of reinforces what the next question I was going to ask. How, I know we touched on this a little, but I would want one of the educators to maybe enlighten us some more. So education does play a role in the pipeline, or whether there's a pipeline or not, into the justice system. So it's looking like, or it's sounding like, the more educated and clear-headed we are, the less we get into that pipeline. Am I right or wrong, Dr.
I would say true.
Okay.
I would say false.
Excuse me, Professor Rafi?
I said I would say false, but the beauty of a panel is you have people with very different ideas.
Okay, why don't you tell us why you think it's true and why you think it's false?
I think he explained why he thinks it's true in the last answer, right?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, Professor Rafi, tell us why you think it's false.
So look, I would just say this. I think that again, there are, in any profession, there are folks who disagree about how you carry out that profession. I think Mr. Lewis and I have a different vision of the role of the defense lawyer. Some of this may be that he's a private practitioner, and so folks select him. As a public defender, we don't select the people that come to us. And I think that comes with an added obligation to understand that so many people come into the system after every institution in life has failed them, right? If you look in Atlanta alone, the worst schools, it's no coincidence that they're correlated to student body being predominantly Black and brown. You look at the worst housing stock, it is correlated to the people that live there being Black and brown, right? In every factor, economics, there is a correlation. And so by the time people get to the criminal justice system, I think there are some people that say that's just that you weren't responsible. I think that lets society off the hook. We can predict there are communities of children that are more loyal to the criminal justice system than other communities because we know that they're going to be failed all along the way. My vision of a defense lawyer is not different from my vision of a doctor or a teacher. I believe that a good teacher has to truly respect their students. They have to meet their students where they are. They have to understand that sometimes they're not where they need to be, and rather than blame them, they have to work with them to help them deal with the situation at hand. Good doctors. If I had a doctor that didn't want to give me choice and respect and dignity, I'd hire someone else. I believe with a lawyer, we have an obligation to meet people who may not be as educated as their more privileged peers. They may have mental health issues. Maybe they have substance abuse challenges, but we have an obligation to treat them with dignity and respect, to make sure they understand the consequences that face them and the choices that they have, the evidence before them. Sometimes it takes a little longer to do that when people have had challenges in their life, but we have an obligation to make sure they understand and elevate that voice. And I would say the problem with, I would recommend everyone read Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, which is a wonderful book that helps you understand how many people end up in this system. And once they get in the system, we show them no dignity at all. And so I think the greatest calling we have as defense lawyers is to make sure that in a system that doesn't want to humanize and dignify someone, we speak for them, lift up that voice, and challenge anyone who won't see them as a human being, as flawed as they may be. That's an awesome responsibility. I think those of us who are public defenders, where people don't choose us, don't want us, have never had someone give them a voice in life, have even a higher obligation to practice that way.
Thank you so much.
One thing?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sort of in a very unique position sitting here in Gwinnett County because I'm on the court appointed list. So if I have 200 cases a year, 150 clients are appointed and 50 would be retained. So the bulk of my clients are appointed to me. Here's the difference between a retained and appointed client. A retained client is paying you to make the case go away without ever having to go to trial. He doesn't want to go to trial. He's paying you to resolve the case without going to trial. The typical appointed client never even asks my opinion. He's telling me, listen, I didn't do it and I'm going to trial. Okay, that's fine, you're going to trial. Even while I'm talking about trial, he's talking about how I want him to plead. Sir, nobody has said plead to you. Nobody's talking about a plea. We're getting ready for trial. And the Friday before trial, you know what I hear? Why didn't you give me a plea? Sir, why would I have gone to get you a plea? I did not negotiate for a sex change because I didn't plan on getting one. And I didn't go get a plea for a person that says that they're innocent. So what fundamentally I've learned in the last 20 years is there's two ways to be a defense attorney. You can either be a waiter or you can be a nutritionist. When the person who's sitting there with a 30 BMI says, I want a double fried steak, you either go in the back, you respect them, as Professor Rapping says, you respect them and go in the back and get them a double fried steak, or you look at their skin in their eyes and you say, no, I think you need a tuna salad. I'm gonna always go in the back and get the double fried steak. Whatever you as a grown adult think is best for you, that's what I'm gonna do. I know that that's not best for you, but you're not asking me. And I'm not here to coerce you into entering a plea, even though you're only looking at 5 years on the plea, and I know this judge is gonna give you 25 years if we lose.
Let me suggest a third option. If there is an option of a double steak and fries or a salad, and the person says double steak and fries, you know it's bad for them, instead of going and just getting them the double steak and fries, develop a relationship, have a conversation, help them understand why that double steak and fries is not good for them. So I think one of the problems, and I'm not talking about Mr. Lewis, I don't know Mr. Lewis, and I know Joshua has the utmost respect for Mr. Lewis, but there are many defense lawyers out there who do not invest the time on the front end developing that relationship. Because when you have a relationship, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a lawyer, when someone wants to do something that in your professional opinion is not right for them, you don't just let them do it. You help them understand how they get to the right decision. That takes time. It takes relationship development. It takes respect. That's the key to being a defense lawyer in my mind.
I agree with that. I agree.
Thank you. So I'm going to take another question and I'll turn it over to
give Coach D a chance. Give Coach D
Coach
a chance.
D. Coach D want to jump in here.
Go ahead.
Coach D about the bus.
I appreciate that, guys. Great stuff. So a couple of things. One, and I'll try to be brief. I'll try to follow the guidelines. So I'm just waiting on Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis, I'm just waiting on you to pretty much say everything that goes on with the judicial system that happens to Black people is Black people's fault. So that's one thing, right?
Nah.
I'm almost waiting on that.
Nah.
Secondly, what I hear you addressing the product, the not the problem, but the result of the problem. So a lot of things that you've spoken on are products of problem. The real issues are hardly ever addressed. You've spoken about your level of entitlement, not necessarily financial entitlement, but the knowledge, the information, your position, you having your kids around, being able to properly educate them. All these things are entitlements, right? We can't just be presumptive and think that everyone has those same opportunities to be able to be in those positions, do those things. So my thing is, I think I want to hear about, I really want to hear about the systemic oppression and racism that is highly ingrained in policing itself. Like we can't talk about the system and almost pointing the finger at the result of what people are doing and opposed to real problem with not really addressing what policing is, not really addressing the origin of where it even comes from. Policing, the concept of policing was strictly about slave catching. That's the concept of what policing is. And so here it is, 400 plus years later, we are still seeing these things happen today. So if we are understanding from a historical stance, we must realize and say, you know what, there's a problem systemically with what's going on from a policing and a judicial system. We must understand that particular perspective. So I don't really hear anything about the accountability that needs to be taken by the system. I know I've heard, not necessarily from you, but I've heard about reform, what needs to happen. So locking up a police officer is just one piece of it. We understand that reform is about the DA. We understand that reform is about the judge, the lawyer, the prosecutors. So a lot of the things that we are dealing with now, when I hear you say things like your chances of being killed by someone is probably going to be by a Black person, is higher by a Black person opposed to a police officer, that's entitlement. And that's also not addressing the real problem. We're talking about economic disparity. We talk about education disparity. You use the 1/2, you use the 1/3. There's an educational disparity that is intended, like it was systematically put in place. We can't talk about these things without talking about redlining. We can't talk about these things without talking about the New Deal. We can't talk about these things without talking about Jim Crow, Plessy versus Ferguson, Brown versus the Board of Education. These things are real. So what is taking place from a historical place has present implications on what's going on now. So to Mr. Rapp's point, yes, there is a 3rd, 4th, and 5th option as well that we must, as community service, because I see lawyers as doctors, as judges, as educators, as community advocates, being people who are community servants. So we're doing a disservice if we're not, one, only educating them on what's really going on, but also having a true and genuine invested interest in their well-being. Honestly speaking, candidly speaking, it sounds like you're a part of an indoctrinated system and you're speaking the same rhetoric in the language of those who has no understanding of what we are really experiencing and the implications of the system. So I appreciate your candidness and I love it. I would also love to invite you to some of my panels and some of my events as well, because I like the authenticity of what you're saying. But I think there's a grave disconnect in what we're doing here and only speaking on 1/2 or one part of the discussion as it relates to policing or judicial system. I'm only hearing one narrative from you. I'm not hearing anything in its totality.
Okay.
Coach D, I see a lot of responses to your discourse on the chat. And if I were to read them out, we won't leave here today. But I want to quickly take one question before I turn it over to Josh. We'll still come back and take more questions. So please, guys, hold on. Abby Coker said, there are a number of Black people, particularly men, who are stopped by the cops. They are polite, they are courteous, and follow all the rules and instructions, but they still get arrested or shot by the cops. What are your thoughts on this?
Who's that question for?
Well, you or Professor Rapping, the two of you that are lawyers, I think.
Let me start here, and I probably can tie an answer with my response to that with actually what Coach D is saying. I don't believe that you can design a system that's going to meet everybody's needs. And when I talk about anything, I talk about, remember what Professor Rapping said earlier? I want to talk to people like I would talk to my children. I'm not talking to my children about how to fix the system. I'm talking to my children about how to survive the system. I'm talking to my children about how to navigate their way through the system. I'm not the marijuana guy. That's not who I am. I'm on the A-list here in Gwinnett. So what I try is the murders, the rapes, the armed robberies, the aggravated child molestations. I don't try to load possession with intent to distribute. They give that to somebody else. The forgeries, that George Floyd forgery, I don't see those cases. I get the monsters. So first thing we have to do is we have to separate the what they call the mass incarceration, incarcerating the Black men for drug crimes cases. That's not me. When I get a case, there's an actual victim. There's somebody dead, or there is somebody raped, or there's somebody shot in the face. So I got a real victim. So when we start talking about the officer putting handcuffs on people, we're not talking about them putting handcuffs on people for oxycodone or whatever, which might be legal. No. What I'm trying this year that's illegal, gonna be illegal forever. Because it's never going to be okay for one person to kill another person. So most of what I handle, 80% of what's in my office right now, somebody called the police. A wife or a mother called the police on her son. You know why you call the police on your son? Because he out of control. He not listening to what you saying. He beating his sister in the face with a pistol. We got to deal with that. That's who I deal with. I don't deal with the cocaine guy. If he got one little bit of cocaine, they find it on the street, they put it on him. That's not who I got. I got people that do real crime. Nobody can disagree when the judge says, "Oh, I'm gonna give you 20 years," other than his family. Everybody else in the courtroom's clapping because the crime he charged with is horrific. So I'm not, what I'm talking about, not community, it can't be community service, because if somebody raped your daughter, I don't think you want to hear about community service, murder, somebody burn down the house, somebody shoot 2 of your children. I don't think anybody wants to hear in terms of what I try. I try to monster cases. I don't call them monster people. I try to monster cases. And rather than talk about what the evidence is, people come out instant, I didn't do it. Okay, so we're going to trial. Because I can't plead you to 15 years. It's nothing than 50.
Real quick, so are police officers, are those monsters trials when they kill people? Are those monster trials? Because I would be of the mindset to believe that George Floyd was assassinated. I would be of the mindset that various people have been assassinated. So I would like to see those same guys get trial for murder and get convicted for murder, just as any other monster.
And you won't have any disagreement from me. You won't have any disagreement from me if you take.
But why doesn't it? You may not verbally disagree with me, but what I'm saying is systemically, it's not happening. So and again, you spoke to
again. I'm not the prosecutor, so I don't determine.
What's your position? Let me ask you. What's your position in your particular role? What is your obligation? Although you're not the prosecutor, what is your obligation to get equal justice or to make sure these monsters are prosecuted? Although you're not the prosecutor, what is your obligation?
I don't assume any role in making another man do his job. I just do my job. I'm super busy doing my job. So what did Professor Rapping say? Take the time to get to know your client. Take the time to build the trust with your client so that your client doesn't make a poor decision to put his hand on that hot stove. I'm doing a lot of that. And you think, oh, you're Black, so you're talking to another Black dude, he just trusts you. No, that's not it. He says he wants a trial. We have to work through the evidence and we have to talk about the case. I don't have time to go. Nobody's telling me how to do my job. I can't go tell Paul Howard, listen, charge him and pursue the death penalty against him. I worked with Paul Howard for 16 months. Paul Howard's not going to listen to anybody. Paul Howard's going to do Paul Howard. I can't go down there and tell Paul Howard anything.
Okay, so we just concede that the judicial system is what it is. It'll continue to disenfranchise and illegally assassinate Black people and minorities and other people, and white cops to get off.
The system, let me say this, the system moves at a certain pace. The system doesn't move like Google. Floyd is not going to die on Friday. He gets charged on Saturday. He gets convicted on Monday, and the next Friday he's in the
Officer Lewis, with all due respect, Officer Lewis. So real quick historical reference. 1619 Black slaves were brought here. All right. 1776, we're talking Declaration of Independence. 1787, we're talking the Constitution. 1865, we're talking free. 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation. Going to the 60s, civil rights, so on and so forth. So it moved at its own pace. But the same thing that was happening in 1619 is presently happening. So when does it change?
Sir, I suspect that the institutional issues that you discuss aren't going to change in our lifetimes. So now the question is,
let's let rapping jump in here real quick.
So now the question is that you have a young man. How are you going to navigate that young man through? That's all I'm interested in. There's certain things I can't change. I would love for them to create something else for young boys so they wouldn't have to go to high school, especially since they're not interested in high school. Take them to the military between 14 and 18, and then when they actually grow up and their brain develop, then we can educate them, because they're not really interested in school between 14 and 18. But I don't have that option. So I gotta work and cajole and
gentlemen, I have to cut in here. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I want to bring Professor Rapping in here, and I also want to throw in another question so he can tackle both together. I know one of you drew him in, so I'm also going to quickly add this for him to address, and then again I'll turn it over to Joshua and Albert. So Tina Smudge, I hope I said your name right, says kids with addictions can't always make the choice to not use the drugs. Also, the drugs affect their judgment. Then they get in trouble and get punished. It's not just parents who are needing to support these kids. My question is, how can we change the system so that we offer treatment to the kids once they get into trouble? Professor Rappin.
So I want to jump in. I also really want to hear Dr. Gway's position, because I think the work you all do with kids is really provides a valuable, expensive coach perspective. But Coach D, I recruit public defenders from all over the country. Our work is to bring them to systems that are most dysfunctional, right? All across. It started across the South, increasingly it's across the country. Man, I would recruit, the first thing I look for when I recruit public defenders is the spirit that Coach D is reflecting in the way he's talking, because what we understand is being a lawyer is not, it has become a cog in a process that doesn't see the humanity of human beings. And if we're going to change that, we've got to bring lawyers in who have that historical perspective. We have to bring lawyers in who understand the ways that racism and redlining and all of the remnants of slavery and Jim Crow continue to make it more likely that children from certain communities won't have opportunities, will end up running afoul of the rules that society set, and will end up in the criminal legal system. And so there is a culture, and that culture shapes the best of us. I have seen, I want to tell a story about a public defender from Tennessee. I saw a tape. He had been doing this work 30 years. He was elected by the other public defenders to be the spokesperson for the public defenders. He was at a budget hearing. He was asked, do you have enough resources? He said, let me tell you something. He said, I've got a 5-county district. I have 5 courthouses. I have 5 lawyers and 1 investigator. He said, last year we closed 4,000 cases, right? That's 800 cases per lawyer. He went on to say, so we're blessed. We're doing just fine. My lawyers are efficient. They're time savers. Those were adjectives he used with pride. And what I always say when I talk to public defenders is, I don't believe that man came out of law school 30 years ago saying, you know what I want to do with my life? I think I want to help process 800 poor people into cages a year. I think I'll become a public defender. He was slowly and subtly shaped over 30 years by a system that has come to accept that that's all the justice that poor people deserve. And that acculturation doesn't just happen to defense lawyers. It happens to judges. It happens to prosecutors. And when we embrace that mindset, when we pile onto a narrative that demonizes and monsterizes even the worst folks, right? I think as a defense lawyer, instead of contributing to the narrative that these are awful people, there are other people who are going to do that. The prosecutor's going to do that. The judge will probably do it. Our job is to understand everything else in that person's life and make sure that those aspects are infused into the system. So if defense lawyers, we are also agreeing that these horrible people who rape and murder are just irredeemable, that person has no one to speak about the other aspects of their life. It's not that they may not have done something terrible, but we have to understand the full context if we're really about getting systems to work for people. So one more thing I'm going to urge you to do. You should read The New Jim Crow, which in a very detailed, by Michelle Alexander, which in a detailed way walks through the history that Coach D talked about. You should watch 13th, the documentary by Ava DuVernay that makes the connection between our history of racial oppression and our criminal justice system. I'm going to give one more plug. In August, when my book comes out, you should read that. I promise. All right. But I want to end by saying this. We as defense lawyer, last thing, I had a conversation yesterday, close friend James Foreman, who's the son of James Foreman Sr., who was a field secretary for SNCC. And James Foreman Jr. wrote a book called Locking Up Our Own. And it's about the role of African-American leaders in mass incarceration. And what James Foreman said in a podcast that I host yesterday, he said, you know what, in this moment, you have Black prosecutors, Black judges, Black defense lawyers standing up saying this is wrong. They might even have Black Lives Matter signs in their yards. Monday morning, they will go back to looking at Black bodies in front of them, and they will go along with the accepted processing. They won't stand up. They won't object. They won't say this is wrong. They won't say stop. They will continue to churn as the machine throws away another generation of Black and brown people. We have to interrupt that. If we do nothing else, that's the main job of everyone in the criminal justice system, in my opinion.
Professor Rapping, thank you so much for that answer. Do I get a signed copy of that in August?
Stop by my office, man. I'll sign as many as you want.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to jump right back into the questions. We're running over on time. I just want to reiterate, let's try to keep our responses short so that we can get through all of these. We got a couple more. And this question, I know that you just spoke, but this question is for you, Professor Rapping, and for Mr. Lewis. You know, leading into what we do you think that certain criminal defendants have a better shot at freedom depending on who is representing them? So looking at it from an individual aspect of, do you think that individual aspect of who is actually representing you as a public defender or as a court-appointed attorney can be a crucial role in determining the outcome of whether or not that particular defendant goes free or not?
Look, the short answer is yes. So the first thing, as I said, you want a defense lawyer that has the right mindset, that sees you as a valuable human being and who is going to fight for you and help you make the right decisions. But again, 80% of the people in the system have public defenders. Those are the people who are most marginalized, who are the most disadvantaged. And public defenders in America are overwhelmed, right? They have, some of them are handling 200, 300, 400 cases a year, right? And when I was a public defender in DC, I would have about 25 murders at a time, and I work 7 days a week, 80 hours a week to do everything that needs to be done. So we get public defenders who are forced to process, but I believe public defenders that I know are the best lawyers I know. They need the resources, they need the training, and they need the manageable caseloads. But you got to have someone who has all those things: heart, training, experience, resources.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lewis, and then we're going to pass it over to Albert to ask Dr. Gway and Coach D a question.
And I guess for me, the important thing is the police come out in response to a 911 call. And the young lady says that she was raped. #me. The handcuffs go on the Black male at the request of the Black female, and the person is taken to jail. Now, I only see this resolving itself a few different ways. It's either going to be dismissed. He's going to enter a plea, and in Georgia, that means 30 years in prison before he's eligible for parole, or he's going to go to trial. Now, I'll sit with him and we can talk. Those are the case is either going to be dismissed, or it's going to be a plea, or it's going to be a trial. What I am seeing, and I'm listening to Professor Rapping, because there is a contingent of clients that I have had who are very clear. I'm not entering a plea, and I'm gonna do whatever I gotta do to not go to trial. So what are we talking about then? Is that what you're talking about, fighting the system? I'm not gonna enter a plea, and I'm never gonna go to trial. I'm gonna raise whatever issues. I need another investigator. I need another DNA expert. I need this, I need this. Sir, I think we're gonna have to go to trial. I'm not going to trial. Okay, so they bounce from lawyer to lawyer to lawyer. But the rate case still sits there. And then they call up the NAACP and they say, I've been sitting here for 3 years. Sir, you have deliberately obstructed the system from giving you a trial. So what's the answer now? You're arrested for rape. She made the allegation of rape. This is not a mass incarceration drug crime. It's somebody that has been victimized. I don't know if she's been raped or not. That's what the jury trial is going to tell us. It's not getting dismissed. They're never going to enter a plea. And I don't think they should when you look at life in prison. So we got to go to trial. And they don't want to go to trial. So how are we going to do this now? How is that case going to be handled? I'm not talking about indoctrination. I am the grandson of a sharecropper. My father's a blue collar worker, and I came down here to Georgia and hung a shingle. I didn't go to Gideon's Promise. Nobody indoctrinated me. I am learning as I go. I think I'm educated. I think I'm reading. I think I'm understanding, but I don't think anybody can explain to me my experience. My experience. How is it that illegal Hispanics can move 50 kilos of cocaine with no guns, and black men keep shooting each other over $50 worth of marijuana? I can't explain that. We're not talking about 2009. We're talking about 2020. If COVID-19 had not hit, I got 5 homicides, black on black, for less than $50 worth of marijuana. How is that? No, anybody want to ask that? Nobody wants to ask that question. Is that not a fair question to ask? I think it's a fair question to ask. How is it that illegal Hispanics can move $1.2 million worth of cocaine with no guns, and young black men are shooting each other over $40 worth of marijuana? Nobody wants to deal with that. Okay, that's okay. But I think that's a legitimate question. And I think it definitely is a legitimate question when you talk about legalizing marijuana. No, it's not. Okay, it's not legitimate. All right. And so we keep with the rhetoric. I got the institutional racism. Institutional racism was in place when I got my 4 degrees. Institutional racism was in place. I left home at 20. My mother didn't pay for none of that. At some point, you got to make a personal choice about what you're going to do. Dr. Gway understands that. This started with Josh saying, me and Dr. Gway going to disagree. I said, you're probably not going to get the kind of disagreement you want between me and Dr. Gway, because we both come from Jersey. He was in Trenton, I was in Newark. And we've already seen a lot of people that had opportunities. I'm not saying everybody had an opportunity, but we saw people that had opportunity that chose to do something different than we chose to do. And I gotta respect their choices. I'm not gonna disrespect their choices.
Mr. Lewis, I didn't say you and Dr. Gway were going to disagree.
No. Josh thought we were. I told him I didn't think we were, and that's what I
think we all love each other. I'm just saying.
I think he said, let's go get Professor Rapping. And I'm okay with disagreeing because everybody has a different experience.
Absolutely.
All I do is ask the question. My experience, illegal Hispanics moving millions of dollars of cocaine, not shooting each other in the face. Young black men killing each other because this nickel bag seems light. We got to deal with that. Because I got 5 of those in 2020. 5, not 1, not 2. I got 5 of those in 20. I'm talking about dead. Somebody's dead. Well, I'm sorry. In the first case earlier this year, Josh was with me. He didn't die. He was shot at point blank range for $40 worth of marijuana. All the rest of the year, somebody got shot and died. Black man got killed by another black man over less than $50 worth of marijuana. And I think we gotta talk about that at some point in time. Because is that institutional racism? I don't know.
Yeah. Go ahead, Josh. I want to respect.
Oh, yeah.
I want to respect the panel.
I'm gonna pass it. I know Coach D is wanting to jump in. I see you. You're gonna have your chance right now. I'm gonna pass over to Albert to ask the next question.
So this question is for Dr. Bobby Gway and Mr. Richardson. So it seems that from Attorney Lewis's perspective, he's more on the receiving end of the failures of our education system and bad parenting and so on and so forth. Whereas you guys working with children before they get to that point, it's crucial for y'all to mentor children in a society, in the system where they've been failed by society so many times. Do you feel that your efforts, if you could attach a percentage to your efforts in making sure that we don't have these children end up in these situations and grow up to have to be processed through the system, do you think, could you attach a percentage, and do you think that your efforts are actually making a noticeable impact or a noticeable difference?
Yeah, let me, I mean, it's kind of a subjective, kind of response, because we all have experienced and dealt with it in different ways. Like my dear brother Lewis mentioned, coming from Trenton, New Jersey, I was in the trenches. And, mentoring and working with young men, I go way back, over 20 years of doing this. There were some fallen soldiers. And what I mean by that, there were some young brothers out there that was in situations, in their homes. I really stress the homes, folks. I know this is something that you hear a lot. We as mentors, it is our obligation as men in this village. It is our responsibility. And this is the Africanness that come in my mind. I cannot see young men in this village dying and don't do anything about it. So it is our duty and responsibility. Yes, I have the responsibility from home. I give you those orders initially when we talked about the steps and what we believe in. Family and then the community. So over the years I've been doing this, I would say 75%, if I had to give a number, of the young men that I've worked with have, I would say, faced or received or gotten to a point of some type of success, whatever that is for them. Some of that success, and hear me out, some of that success is just not dying,
Right.
not being dead. Some of that success is not going to jail. So there's a level of subjectivity when we talk about what success is. Some of the successes, some of the young men I've worked with is getting to college. Some of it is graduating high school and getting a job. So when I look at in totality over the years of working with these young men, I would say 75% of the young men I've worked with have met that level of success in either not getting killed with some of the hardcore brothers I work with, Bloods and Crips, not ended up in jail. Some of those brothers out there hustling and dealing drugs, whatever the case may be. Some brothers that are 4.0 GPAs and just lost and trying to figure out their way. So I've worked with the continuum, so it's kind of a subjective statement, but I would say 75% of the brothers, man, I had guys who were already destined to be dead or locked up. I heard teachers and principals and educators talked about them and gave them the narrative, you're going to end up here. Those guys are lawyers now. Those guys are doing things now and calling me, inviting me to be godfather for their children and their fathers and serving in the military. So the success stories can go on, and that's what gives me hope for doing what we do.
Yeah, to add on to that, unlike my brother Bobby, I would never give a number, a percentage. I think anytime being in our particular field, anytime one person is lost or doesn't make it in certain regards, we always feel a sense of failure, because I'm talking about, we're speaking of moral obligation. Some people, the moral obligation for me is divinity, right? Like everybody does not have this, doesn't feel the same way that we feel about protecting humanity. And I'm talking extending beyond all ethnicities, all racial demographics, all religion demographics, what have you. I care about humanity. I care about the betterment of humanity and being productive. I will sacrifice my life. And I literally mean I will sacrifice my life for the betterment of humanity and for the betterment of the people that I deal with. I do that on a daily. I do that on a continuum, as Bobby has spoken about. So yes, there are going to be people who not reach a level of success that the outside world would deem as successful. And so we've seen that on various levels, and we've also seen guys where extenuating circumstances has been there, and just making it out of high school is the ultimate success for them. So yes, we've seen it in various capacities. Again, for me, I want to see us be as productive as possible. My barometer for success is us fulfilling our potential. Everyone has a different narrative. Everyone has a different role. We all have different gifts and abilities. So the barometer for me, or the barometer for my kids, or the barometer for my community kids, my village kids, is going to vary across, various lines. So what I want to see us be able to fulfill whatever your potential is for me. So I think that we have to make sure we're realistic, and again, gauging the kids that we're impacting, being able to look at their circumstances, and even the adults. Because again, going back to the point that I made to Officer Lewis, when we're dealing with kids, we must understand that these kids are the product of a problem. These kids are not the problem. Their behavior is not the problem. They're the product of something larger that they don't always have control over. I constantly interact with kids who are dealing with domestic abuse, who are dealing with alcoholism from their parents, or dealing with kids who are parents who have been in the prison pipeline. So we have to understand that, again, building relationships, cultivating those relationships are absolutely, they're invaluable to understand their struggle, understand their reality. And that's one of my biggest issues with the judicial system. Once again, that's one of my, and then that's one of my biggest issues with the educational system as well. We're not building and cultivating relationships to get to know each individual. We're talking about learning deficiencies. Everyone learns at a different rate. Some people are more audio, some people are more visual. Right? So we have to understand, if we're in tune and if we're dealing with these kids the way that we should be dealing with them, these teachers, these educators, these counselors, these principals would also make sure that they're taking the same type of level of genuine concern, compassion, care that Bobby and so many of others who are taking to these kids, so that we can have more of a positive impact. But it doesn't just start and stop with that particular kid. We have to also impact the parents. I'm talking to kids all day, and I'm sharing knowledge, and I'm providing them also alternatives, and I'm allowing them to look at how I live and the things that I do, and I'm exposing them to various parts of culture and intellectual things as well. But guess what? Those same kids are going to go back to a household that is impoverished. Those same kids are going to go back to a household that is lacking the same type of level of intellectual the intellect that I have, and now they're going back talking a certain way. So there has to be a complete overhaul, not only with the kids. So yes, to answer the question, they're always successful kids. And the barometer for me is to make sure that I'm helping them fulfill their complete potential. But my obligation is strictly divinity. And I'm very unapologetic about it. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to, my wife, anybody. I will jeopardize what I do. I will jeopardize who I am, my livelihood, for the betterment of humanity. That's who I am from a spiritual point, and that's who I will continue to be until I'm gone.
Thank you, Coach D. Great response. And we're opening up some more dialogue to the next question that I have for Professor Rapping and for Lewis. And this is going to seem more of a question that should have been directed to Dr. Gway or Coach D, but the reason I'm asking Professor Rapping and Attorney Lewis is because I want to know what your perspective is if you were put in the shoes of Dr. Gway or Coach D at the educational level. And when you look at a child's upbringing prior to entering the system, prior to, having attempted or being accused of committing a crime or committing a crime, do you think that a child's upbringing influences their behavior more than peer pressure and cultural adaptation? And if so, what is something that either the child or the parents can do to try to help their child and vice versa. So if the child has a problem with their upbringing, might have been really that bad, but for whatever reason they've fallen into peer pressure and cultural adaptation, what is it that they can do as parents to try to help their kids? And then also on the flip side, if it's more of the upbringing than it is the peer pressure or the cultural adaptation, what is it that the child could potentially do once he gets into high school to try to fix that, or to try to get some resolve of having to go back into those types of situations, like Coach D said, where they're going home to domestic violence, if they're going home to alcoholic parents, if they're going home to whatever it is the situation is at home.
So I'll give a short answer, but to be honest with you, I'd love to hear what Dr. Gway and Coach D have to say about this or anything else. I'm loving hearing you guys talk, and it really is a pleasure. I think my short answer would be this. I have a little bit of experience in Trenton. I spent a couple years running a tutoring program out of Trenton Central High School. Is that right? I did some work in Central Ward up in Newark when I was living in Jersey, and I then was essentially a foster parent. I had some friends of mine started a school called the Maya Angelou Public Charter School for court-involved kids in DC, and I ran the residence. So I had some of those boys living with me for a few years. And I think that I would just say, I don't think it's so easy to parse out what's happening in the home and the pressures that are felt in the community. I think there's a real overlap between them. I would say when it comes to raising children and developing children, much like developing professionals, whether they're lawyers or teachers, I think we as the people doing the raising have to understand the very real pressures out there that are going to drive them in a direction that is dysfunctional. And we have to make sure they understand those pressures, and we provide them with strategies to resist those pressures. If you're in a household where the parents aren't able to do that for whatever reason, drug addiction, whatever problems they have, mentorship is absolutely critical. But if these children don't have someone recognizing what the challenges are, what the pressures are they're going to face, and have real strategies to resist them, they're going to succumb to the pressures in the same way that those of us in the criminal justice system. Without strategies, we won't even know it. We'll go into the system and those pressures will shape us because we don't have strategies to recognize them and resist them. And so I think the work that Dr. Gway and Coach D are doing is that's what we need.
Yeah.
My turn.
Go ahead, Brother Lewis.
If what we're talking about when we talk about cultural adaptation is that cell phone is basically opening up a portal to what I consider to be almost the worst things in society. I homeschooled children. My sons were homeschooled because I wanted to actually control what they ate, what they saw, what they heard, and make sure that they understood what I valued. So my children didn't even see a school until high school. And then they were shipped off. The oldest one was shipped off to boarding school up in Tennessee. The younger one went to the same school, but he was there ultimately as a day student. And I fought that cell phone. Man, I fought that cell phone, and I didn't break down and give them a cell phone till the absolute very, very last minute. Because I think that with boys especially, I think that they are easily swayed by what they see on that phone. I think they have too much ready access to porn with the phone. I think there's too much contact on social media with the phone. And I think that limits the impact that parents can have when they're always on that phone. And we can walk around now and we could just see it in the restaurants, in the cars. Nobody seems to be able to ultimately put down that phone. I told myself that my children would never listen to rap. And I realized early on, I can't keep rap out the house. The boys like to listen to trap music. I can't stand it. Most of my clients listen to it. I can't stand it. I don't think it's necessarily constructive or productive. I think it's misogynistic. I think there are a lot of problems with it, but it's here, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. When we talk about strategy, though, my strategy, because the boys play baseball, My strategy was ultimately to try to take the sport of baseball and teach it what I need to teach it. And that's when you really begin to understand me. When that ball is thrown in the dirt and the ump calls it a strike, I'm not interested in the ump. You get 3 strikes, and I need to see what you can do with them 3 strikes. Now, I'm buying all kinds of ball machines and training you. I don't want to hear the ump. I don't want to hear the first baseman. I don't want to hear how the institution is not allowing you to succeed. I'm going to train you so that you will bat in the 1, 2, or 3 hole. You will step up whenever you need to step up. We've trained in the rain. Are you training in the rain? Yeah, because the game's not going to be called and you're going to have to hit in the rain. And my youngest has hit 2 walk-offs in the rain. Great. We're going to train. Now, so do you want me to train everybody like I train my children? No, no way. You want me to talk to everybody like I talk to my children? There's no way. No way. I can't even talk to my son the way my father talked to me. The culture won't allow it. If I talk to my son on the baseball field the way my father talked to me, defects will come out and they'll cart off my children. So you got the culture, first of all, handcuffing me. But I'm going to build a child. I'm telling you the system's broken. I'm telling you the institutions are racist, but you can still be a doctor. You can still be a PhD. So I got to build you to be that. I can't change the system. I can't make the ump call strikes. I can't make the ump call balls. I can't make the first baseman call you safe when clearly you safe. I can't change any of that. But I can make sure that I'm out there for the 3 hours today because it's sunny today, and the 3 hours tomorrow, and the 3 hours on Monday, and we train, and we hit the inside seam to right, and we hit the inside seam to right, and we hit the inside seam to right, Angela Duckworth, and we hit the inside seam to right, and we hit the inside seam to right, and we hit and we working on the same thing over and over and over. So when the ump calls the first ball in the dirt a strike, and he calls the ball at your eyeballs a strike, and you only get 1 swing. Everybody else getting 3 swings. I'm telling you they're getting 3 swings. You only going to get 1 swing, but I only need 1. I need 1. That's unfair. It is unfair. It's going to continue to be unfair. Are you going to sit here and keep saying, I want 3 swings? You're going to get 1 swing. Train yourself to hit that one swing. Make sure that's a double to right, driving in 2 runs, and we good.
Well said. Hey, my brother, I think that's the. Hey, let me just chime in real quick, Josh, because this is a very pivotal part. And Brother Lewis, thanks for sharing that. I think that captured one of my belief systems. There's a theory called critical race theory. And one of its critical tenets is that racism is permanent. It's permanent. It's a permanent fixture in global history, and it still is now. We're not even talking about the racism that happens out of this land we call the United States. That's a whole different ballgame. But let me digress back to your initial point about the family. The family structure is the most important part of a child's success. The father is the first teacher. The mother is the first teacher. Now, due to systemic stuff, we know that the impact that has had on generations of mothers and fathers. Hence, we have this post-traumatic syndrome of oppressed syndromes, or we want to call it slave syndrome, happening, all right, that have destroyed families over time. Let's talk about Black families here. Working and growing up in Trenton, New Jersey, I've seen the most depressing situations in family. I have friends in Jersey who would come. We always living poor. I remember hooking the hose from my house to the neighbor's house just to get water and pour the water every morning and warm it up to take bath before I went to school. The structure I was blessed to have in my home, kids would come, we were dirt poor. We're all living in the projects, but they would come to my home. And I remember kids talking about, can we chill here for a little bit? I don't want to go home. They want to have dinner with us. My parents set up a system where every night we had dinner together. I don't care if it was sardines, we had dinner together. So the structure I was blessed to have with my family Kids in the hood didn't see that or didn't have that. So that was the foundation that was set in me. I had guys who were out there hustling. I've been in stolen cars with some of them, making the mistakes. I've been out there, you know, doing stuff, but I knew when I went home, there was a different type of reinforcement that was going on at home, like Coach D mentioned. Some of the things we're saying from the outside, they may not be getting that back home. But for me, I had that level of reinforcement of mind, body, and spirit and building my culture being reinforced at home. So the home is that first foundation. Now, we know that there's going to be a lot of young people that get to the high school level, middle school level that don't have that. That's where we have to intervene. We cannot continue to lay a blind eyes to it and say, hey, it's, you know, it's what it is. We know systemic racism is here to stay. It's not going nowhere. It's in my opinion, young. You're just talking about, we talk about 400 years like it's not a long time. It's really not a long time. You're talking about African civilizations that were in rule for empires for over thousands of years. So this system of racism that has been created is new. It's a baby. So y'all better sit tight and get ready for the long haul. I hope that this thing is dismantled by the time my boys become men. That's what I pray for. But the reality is, it is absolutely young. We just came out of bondage. We just came out of the bondage. We just came out of institute, and we're still dealing with, you know, brother, talk about redlining. We can talk about, you know, the educational system that was built. All these different systems was built. They were the handmaidens of racism. Education, medical, housing, you name it. They all came, those are the residues that came out of this institution, folks, and it's here. Unfortunately, we were captured from our native land, and we've lost that. We've lost that connection of who we are as Black people. So those are things that I think myself, and you have some of those revolutionary educators out there, those revolutionary activists, those revolutionary people that say, you know what, we're going to do what we can do to inject something in these young people to believe in themselves, give them some hope to be able to at least get to a point of dismantling this thing that we're wrestling with. We've been wrestling with over 400 years just here in the United States, or this land we call United States, but it's not new, and it's actually young in the grand scheme of history.
Yeah, I'll say something real quick. Getting back to the original question, I don't like to speak in complete terminology, right? Like, I don't like to speak in absolutes. I think those things are synonymous. I think that there's duality as it relates to parenting as well as peership, right? Like, I think those things are equally as important. I do think that first line, as Bobby spoke on, I think the parenting is the first line. And I say the parenting, the biological parenting, because if you think about guys who are older, 50, 60, 70, my parents' age, a lot of times those people were community parents, right? So it wasn't only the responsibility of the biological parents, but also the community parenting. So the community parenting is what? An extension of your peers. So I do think that biological parenting, having that forefront at home, is extremely vital. However, we have seen people who have that forefront at home who have also strayed and run amok and have not become the person that we thought they would be. And consequently, we've seen those people who did not have the biological parents at home, who've gone off, but had the community parenting, had the community loving, and the mentors and so many others and they come off and be great people in society, great abiding citizens, so on and so forth. So I'm not of the mindset that it's parenting is the most important. I think it is the forefront. I think it's the initial thing. But after the initial thing, there is something that comes after. So that sometimes that coming after could be equal as important or even more important than what you saw at first. So to answer the question, I'm not sure. I think there's duality involved, and I think there's, I think they're equally as important.
Can I address that what Coach D just said?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's important. When I was growing up, I had a number of friends, and their parents sort of parented me. I have not done that. I'm just going to tell you flat out, working 70, 80 hours a week, I parented mine and I haven't parented any others in the neighborhood. My focus has been strictly on making sure that I'm not this cog in the machine that just chews up whoever gets arrested by the police. And because of that, I don't have a dog. My youngest son wants a dog. I thought we can't have a dog because I can't walk the dog in the morning. I can't walk the dog in the afternoon. I'm not, when I get there to the jail, the interview might take half an hour, it might take 3 hours. I don't know how long it's going to take, and I got to be flexible with it. But to also speak to Coach D's point, what I have done with my children in terms of the baseball is when they have played baseball, I have become sort of the de facto batting coach. And what I have seen is white and Hispanic, of course, Black parents have allowed me to do whatever I need to do to get their son to hit the ball. The son is crying and he crying. And I used to tell him, listen, it's okay. As long as you can still see the ball, stay in the box. It's fine. It's fine. So people will give me their 8-year-old and they'll let me make their 8-year-old cry so that their 8-year-old can hit the ball better. But then when I go see the 26-year-old at the jail and I spent 20 hours with him working on his case, you know what he says? I need to hear you say you care about me. Are you for real? Are you for real? I don't know what that is, Coach D. Maybe Coach Bobby Gway knows what that is. You don't need, listen, my wife will, if my wife goes out and buys me a Nissan GTR tomorrow and says, you tear up the road with this on these Michelin tires, she never has to say she loves me again. Her buying the car tells me all it needs to tell me. I'm out the jail 20 hours with the client and he still needs to hear you care about me. You see the motions, right? I'm talking to you, right? So when Professor Rapping says trust, I'm like, what are we talking about? 100 hours? 300 hours? Nobody can do that. We got to get real at a certain point. I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to do what you say do. I share all kinds of stuff about my life. People, other lawyers say you should never share that about your life. I tell them all kinds of things about my life because I only understand the world through my own autobiography. I understand where I'm deficient. I understand, and I keep working on me. But I have to go back to that point. A white mother with an 8-year-old is allowing me to do whatever I need to do to get her son to hit that ball. And a 26-year-old after 20 hours is still saying, I need to hear you say you love me. You for real? I love you. I care about you. That's what you need.
Yeah, he needs that, Officer Lewis, because everybody requires something differently. When you say what is that, what it could potentially be is underlying issues that have never been resolved. So when you say what is that, that could very well be what it is. So again, he doesn't know how to love. Maybe he doesn't know what love looked like. And oftentimes we assume that it's going to be presented the same way all the time. And I'm just like you, Officer Lewis. And Bobby will tell you, I train his son as well. And I'm very good at what I do as a trainer and as a life coach and as a mentor. But I tell you, like, I go very hard. Like, I'm a no nonsense. You're going to do this. So a lot of those things, and parents believe in me, but not only because of my ability of my acumen of knowing the game and things like that, but also because of the belief. I speak with conviction, like the passion that you guys see. Like, I can't hide it. Like, this is me, like across the board, whether I'm with you guys or whether I'm at home with my kids or whether I'm in the gym or whatever, at a school speaking, I can't hide it. Like, I'm so ingrained in wanting better and being passionate. Like, I can't fake it. So what it may be, Officer Lewis, is that 26 or 27-year-old may not know that what you're presenting could very well be love, or he doesn't understand the authenticity, or it doesn't look the same for him. So he may not know what that is.
And he may not ever be able to know because it may take too many hours for him to know.
Right.
Possibly.
Right. Well, Brother Lewis, real quick, and then you could jump in, Josh. I mean, that could be something as well as, are you there for a paycheck, or is there some type of deep humanity commitment to what my suffering is? I have teachers all the time that said, look, I'm just here to get my paycheck and do my job. But then I have teachers who go above and beyond, and they show that relationship and build that relationship with their students and care and compassion, even the worst ones, and go above and beyond and transform that student's life.
Is that
That
in,
could be the
is that in
context
the
of
words? Is that in the words or in the deeds?
Say it again.
Is that in the words or in the deeds?
Well, it could be both. It could be
Okay.
both. Some people may want to hear it.
Okay.
I mean, we all come from different, we all wired differently. Some people may want to hear it. I know I do things. I feel like I'm showing my wife all the love, but she's like, you know, you ain't never tell me you love me in this amount of money. I'm like, damn, I'm taking out garbage every night. I'm doing all this stuff, but she needs to hear it. So everybody we're wired differently. So he just want to hear it.
And that's part of what I learned. And even though you're there,
Yeah,
and you're seeing what's going on,
absolutely.
Nobody else's lawyers come to see them. You coming to see me. You coming to see me, but you still need to hear, I care about you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's close it off with that. We're going to start wrapping up. This has been a great panel. I want to go ahead and just extend thank yous to Dr. Bobby Gway, to Coach D, to Attorney Lewis, to Professor Rapping, and to my colleague Albert. Thank you guys so much for everything today. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to pass it over to the host so that she can open it up for a couple of questions and answers. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap up this panel. But I just want to go ahead and say thank you all for your time.
Thank you, guys. Great discussion. I'm going to ask the audience, the participants, to raise their hand. If you have we'll take just 3 questions, and then I'll allow the panelists to give us closing thoughts, 1 minute each. Right now, if there's any participant that has a question, I'm actually going to take your questions now, 2 or 3, and then we'll take closing thoughts. And one more thing, if you would like to receive information, materials, resources from the panelists, please send your chat with parenting resources on this meeting, and send us your email or drop your email address, and we will pass on the information. Also, if you would like to get notified about other events from these speakers, from the panelists, or from parenting resources, also send us your email address, and we will make sure we put you on our mailing list. Again, if somebody has a question, you can put it on the chat, or you can raise your hand. Any questions? I know some were posted earlier, but I can't go back all the way. So if you can quickly ask that question, I would ask the media people to please unmute people. If you see them, raise their hand, or just post your question, whichever way. We want to wrap up quickly. We have just about 10 minutes to go. Okay, while we wait for question, I have a question of my own. And that question is, I know that somebody mentioned, I don't remember who now, said upbringing, it's a case of upbringing versus cultural adaptation and peer pressure. So what is the role of parents in helping out, helping children, helping young adults to deal with peer pressure? You know, even as parents, we come under peer pressure sometimes at work. I know I do sometimes, and what I have told myself is, before I get to a situation, I already have my boundaries in place, so I know what to do when I get there. But how do you help a child or young adult to understand this? Any one of you can answer.
Yeah. Well, let me just hit a few seconds of this, and the rest of the brothers can chime in. We've lost teaching our young people, particularly if you're talking about the parents, identity development, and that doesn't start when they're 13, 12. Identity development start at a very young age. It starts really enforcing the identity, who they are, where they come from, where can they go, right? All those things play in really appreciating their identity, because by the time they hit society and the world get them, the world's going to start to tell them who they are. So before the world get them and tell them who they are, we need to, as parents at an early age, start to really help them with identifying who they are. Yes, I have kids, thousands of kids I've worked with who, they missed that boat. So it is now folks like us, folks who are passionate about these young people, that help them to try to establish and identify who they are. One of the questions I ask students all the time: where are you from? Where are you from? Where you come from? Where your family from? So they can start to explore the identity of who they are.
That is absolutely true. Go ahead, Coach Lee.
Just to add to it, I certainly concur with that. And one of my methods is often when asking them where they're from, I often ask them, who are you? And oftentimes they'll give me something vague, as in, I'm a basketball player, I'm a baseball player, I'm a rapper, I'm a whatever. But I often tell them that's not who you are. These are things that you do. So it's very important that we teach them who they are. Understanding, are you a lover? Are you a leader? Are you strong? Are you weak? Like real attributes that define your character with who you are. So those things are vitally important. And I also think the role of a parent is to be effective. At the bottom of the line, and I think that's at the end of the day, we want to be effective and we want to be productive, right? So I hear Attorney Lewis, what he's saying, he's here to be effective and productive with his kids. Whether you like it or not, whatever is being said, whatever is being told, you adapt and you roll with it because I need you to be effective. And I'm like that as well. So I would never argue or debate a point about understanding what we're thrown and let's make sure we're being productive. I would never argue that, Attorney Lewis. But oftentimes we're not making sure, we're not setting the ground rules. And so being effective, when I say being effective, I think it's very important that we be relative to our kids. All right, we have to evolve. We can be stern on our belief system and our morals and our values and our integrity, but I think it's very important that we're relative and that we understand our kids and our kids understand us. That's very important to me. So I say, make sure that we don't sacrifice our fundamental principles, our integrity, but let's make sure we're relative to what their experiences are.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Go ahead, Prof.
I was just going to say, it looks like we have our first question in, and it's for Attorney Lewis. What would you do differently with your clients from now on as a result of the discussion today, if any, and if so, what? And that was a question from the audience.
What would I do different? Oftentimes what happens, it takes me a little while to process information. So sometimes what happens is I'll have a trial, and in between that trial and the next trial, I'll still be processing that first cross-examination, that third cross-examination. I've learned, Coach D may have already known it. I mean, I've just only learned this. So you say, where have you failed as a parent? It would probably be in the area of peer pressure, because I had a type of father where my father said, go left, and I went left. Like, it was like, he knows more than me. He's raising me. Why would I do anything other than what he's saying? My firstborn put me on notice, you don't know much, because I was like, don't go right. Like, you can stand still, go left, go backwards. And he was like, I'm going right. Really, dude? You going right? So I've had to learn with my oldest to just give him space to actually do some things to mess up. Because for me, it's like a waste of time to burn your hand and then we got to go to the hospital. But I've learned for some boys, it may be better for them to burn their hand and then take them to the hospital, because it's a constant battle for the next 3 days fighting not to let them get to the stove. So with my oldest, he's really taught me I have to give him space. So I think in regards to him, I would do some things different. If I was 3 years ago, I think I would ultimately do some things different. I think I probably would have gave him a little bit more space then, but I'm giving him the space ultimately that he needs now. I think Coach D probably has an awareness of that. In terms of what I've learned here today, I've learned a lot from all of the participants. I have to process what I was told. Then I have to figure out, after I process what I was told, can I fit it into what I do? I can't be Professor Rapping. Like, I'm not even built that way. Like, okay, you need 150 hours of my time. Okay, I need to give you to somebody else. because I can't give you 150 hours because that's like 3 trials for somebody else, like that wants to go to trial and has some understanding. Like I got a marketing degree, I got a psychology degree, I got a philosophy degree, I got a law degree, but I don't have a social work degree. And so I'm not really built that way. I'm built to listen. I'm built to do what it is that you say you want me to do, even if you may not want me to do that or don't understand the ramifications of what you're asking me to do. I'm built to advise you, but I'm not built to like, we're 25 hours of what? What are we talking about? You say you didn't do it. Like, what else are we talking about? Sir, you were running 105. I didn't do it. I don't need to see my lawyer for 25 hours to talk about that. That's just not what I need. And so I sometimes superimpose, as Dr. Bobby Gway said, I sometimes superimpose the type of person I am onto my client, and then I form a boundary. At 25 hours, I'm going to start to get a little antsy about continuing to come out here and talk to you when, as Professor Rapping has already told you, somebody else got an 800-person caseload. Like they're not even getting an hour. You've got 25 and you still got questions about what you got questions about. We just have to go to trial, and that's the beauty with trial. That's why I love trial. So I have to still process what I was told. It'll take me about 3 days. I learned a lot today.
Thank you. Josh, do you have the next question?
It looks, I don't see another question.
Okay,
It looks like that was the only one.
Okay, I see 2 questions here. Hold on.
Okay.
From Ngozi, it says, thank you. This was a great discussion. Are there any specific actions we can take as participants to help drive this whole issue in a positive direction? So any thoughts there?
I think Professor Rapping wanted to say something.
Go ahead, Prof.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot, huh, Mr. Lewis?
I knew you wanted to say something from the prior, so I want you to tie it in because I wanted to hear what you wanted to say.
Like you, Mr. Lewis, I'm still processing. I'm 2 questions behind you all. So this question is, what can people specifically do, right? I think it's quite simple, is be conscious, right? Be conscious. I think it is just so easy in this society to become numb to things that happen every day. We come to accept injustice and inequality every day. And then we see it on TV and we're numb and we don't even think there's anything wrong with it. I would just say, be conscious. When you have friends and people you associate with who seem a little unconscious, approach them in a way that they can take it, right? Don't be preachy, because no one accepts when you're talking at them, but be someone who helps open eyes as best you can. And it starts with you being conscious.
Can I add that everybody plays a different role? I mean, I love the Professor Rappings because he's going to attack the institution. He's going to attack them. I'm going to deal with the person. There's always somebody on the team that's screaming at the ump. That's not a strike. That's not a strike. That's not my role. I don't care what the ump is calling. I need to walk you through how you need to face this pitcher. Everybody plays a different role in the process, and you have to appreciate everybody's role. I can't be the guy yelling at the ump because I don't care about the ump. I care about the batter. All I care about is no matter what he throws, the pitcher's got to let it go. And when he lets it go, I'm going to tear the cover off of it. Everybody plays a little bit different role.
No, that's a great point in the sense that Dr. King talks about the beloved community. I think every family, every parent, every individual have to have a beloved community surrounding them. We cannot do this alone. Our young people cannot do this alone. So wherever you are, wherever space you're in, try to connect with that beloved community in this village. It could be your church, it could be the school, it could be your neighbors. Start to build that community, because when things are starting to fall apart, when the burden and the stress of parenting start to creep up on us, our children, I've experienced it with my children. That's why I have Coach D. Coach D is in my beloved community. He probably have more real conversation with my son than I do. So we have to tap into that beloved community, those people that are in our circles. If you don't know, go look for them. Go look for people. All right. There's so many folks out there that's willing to. Just have to do the due diligence to go find them.
So I like to add to that, especially really all three, but Mr. Professor Rapping said conscious. So Bobby knows that I often use the 3 C's. When we're talking about what can we do, being conscious is the first step, right? That's number 1. Being collective is the other C. And the third C is going to be being consistent. And so to kind of tie into what Mr. Attorney Lewis and Bobby Gway just said, so we can be conscious, all right? And we can also understand that everyone plays a particular position. Everyone has their own role, as Attorney Lewis was just speaking of. And then also what Bobby just spoke about, as far as finding people, I would challenge us to say that we can be consistent right now. That would be the third C. So we're already conscious enough because we're here. Everybody's present to talk about what's going on. Okay, so we can be collective because it's enough people here to talk about not only the problems, but also to start identifying some solutions, because everyone plays a particular position and a particular role to be effective in their own regard, right? And the third thing is, let's be consistent with doing so. So if we can be consistent, not make this a once over, let's not make this an idle and isolated time that we get together. We should be more consistently getting together on things so we can advocate for changes and even continue to empower and build on what we're already doing. And let's exercise and utilize everyone's strengths in what they do. And then with doing those things, I think one of the most important pieces in doing that is we cannot be distracted when we're conscious, when we're collective, and when we're consistent. We cannot be distracted by the differences, right? Like that's one of the biggest things. We cannot be distracted because someone else believes in a different something, a different ideology, or a different format for something else. No, the biggest thing is that we must steadfast on what we agree on. Forget what we disagree on. I only care about what we agree. I don't care that Officer Lewis may have an entirely different philosophy to something else that I don't believe, right? I do care that he cares about making sure that we are focusing on what's the problem right now, making sure we can address that. So being conscious, being collective, and being consistent.
Thank you so much. Professor Rapping? Closing thoughts? Okay, let me just say, I don't have any more questions, so I'm asking you to give us your closing thoughts, and then let us know where we can get your book or how we can get your book.
Well, let me start. I'm gonna start with the book. So you can go to Amazon, you can go to Barnes and Noble, you can go to Beacon, you can go to Indie Books, anywhere online that sells books. And I'd appreciate pre-orders. It's a great book. You'll love it. And the guy who wrote it is amazing. So let me give you my closing thoughts. And my closing thoughts, to close, I want to share my favorite story from the Talmud. And it's about a wise old man who went to Sodom, and he'd walk the streets day and night, preaching about hope and goodness, preaching against hatred and killing. And at first people gathered around, they listened, they were interested, but over time they lost interest, they'd stop paying attention, they'd even mock him behind his back. The man was undeterred. He walked the streets day and night preaching. And one day a child came to him and said, "Old man, you walk the streets day and night preaching about goodness and love and preaching against killing and thieving. And don't you see no one's listening? Don't you see no one cares?" The old man said, "I see that, child." The child said, "Then tell me, why do you persist?" The old man said, "Let me tell you, child, if at first when I came here, preaching about goodness and love and hope, I did so because I believed I could change the world. I no longer believe I can change the world today. If I continue to do those things, if I continue to preach and yell and scream, it's no longer to change the world. If I do those things today, child, it's to keep the world from changing me." So my closing thoughts is this, right? Think about the world you want to see. Go out there and don't let the world that exists change you. That alone is your role.
Thank you so very much. We are glad to have had you on this conversation. Dr. Gway, your closing.
Oh man, I gotta follow up. That brother just dropped the mic, man.
I'm glad you did it for me.
Man, that's some pressure, man. Man, well, you know what? First off, my sister, I appreciate you just galvanizing and with the rest of the moderators, Joshua and Albert, just putting this together. It is indeed profound. I echo what Coach D said. This cannot be a one-time thing. We have to continue to build a community and build this beloved community we're in for our kids' sake. All of us up here have children. We have, if not biologically, we have community children. So if we make the decision that we're too tired, if we make the decision that we're too weary, we're doing our children an injustice. Our African ancestors suffered on the transatlantic slave trip. They suffered on the plantation. They suffered when they were captured from the motherland. Some of them grabbed the dirt and put it in their mouth because that's the only resemblance of their root that they would be able to take with them on this captivity. Some of them was on the Atlantic slave trade on that ship, jumped aboard in Atlantic Ocean. I'd rather die than to be held captive. You have to make a decision now. Do you want to be held captive in the system that you're in, or you want to make a decision to do something not for this generation? Folks, put it into perspective. Our ancestors, when they prayed, when they fought, when they rebelled, they didn't think that they would see freedom with their own eyes. They were doing it for their children's children. So we have to put that in the context and realize everything I do today, it may be directly influencing my child under my home, but I'm doing it for the generation and legacy that's going to come after them. So that's our obligation as a people. Coach D mentioned the humanity that we're in. We have to regroup our minds and refocus on that humanity and that responsibility we have to maintain that humanity of life and freedom.
Thank you so much. Anthony Lewis, your closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts. My children and I live in a community. We're over in Stone Mountain. It's a primarily Black community. And COVID-19 has turned out to be an unbelievable blessing. One, because I just got a chance to just pause and take a deep breath. Like Professor Rapping, I have written also a book. It's with the editor now. And that's just something that just ultimately wouldn't have happened. During COVID-19, the boys and I, because we could still go out, have been training baseball. And every time I go out, I look onto the other field, and there are always some young Black men running routes in football. Football was always really my first love. Didn't want the children to play it, but it was my first love. And football, it speaks to me at a cellular level. At a cellular level. We're going to go into the film room and we're going to study film. We're going to go out into the field and we're going to run this play over and over and over and over. And then in the game, when they hand you the ball, you can do all the improvising you want. It's unbelievable. It's the only game I know that's like that. You're supposed to go to the A gap and you jump cut and you take it out and you run around the end. That's not what we worked on. It doesn't matter what we worked on. The only thing that matters is that it works now. It doesn't matter what we saw in the film room. It doesn't matter what the refs are doing. The only thing that matters is that we get this 12 yards, that we get this 15 yards, that we score. So you can take whoever, I like Professor Gway, take what Gway's saying. And if it doesn't work, use what Rapping is saying. And if it doesn't work, use what Lewis is saying. And when that doesn't work, listen, because the opponents, they're coming. So study, go to school, get your degree. I went and got my degree. I didn't plan on having my own business. I was going to go work for somebody. And then I started seeing what it was like. And I'm like, this is not going to work at all. Me going to work for somebody else, that's not going to work. So I did a quick jump cut and spin move. I reverse field and I did my own thing. And that's what I want young people to do. I want you to go to school. I want you to get educated. I want you to follow the course that everybody has sort of led you to believe is the correct course. Somewhere on that course, though, you're gonna have to improvise. You're gonna have to come up with your own way. Nobody even knows what that way is now. And that's how I think they're gonna be successful.
Thank you very much. And finally, Coach D, your closing thoughts.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I want to talk about purpose. Fulfill your purpose. I want everyone to fulfill their purpose. If you don't know your purpose, identify your purpose. Search for your purpose. I like to use the alphabet as an analogy. A is your beginning point. Z is your end point, which is your purpose. When you're filling out, when you fulfill your purpose, just make sure B through Y is aligned with Z, period. Make sure your B through Y is aligned with Z, and then you are fulfilling your purpose. Thank you, guys. I enjoyed everybody.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take a few minutes, well, just 2 or 3 minutes to quickly acknowledge my team members who are working behind the scenes and say thank you to all of them. Osa, Igumbo, and Femi Falowo were behind the media. I have other people doing other stuff. Poluke, Ajayi, Achenyo, and Steve, Ade Omodele, Afra, Bola Adeshuyi, Bemi Bankole, Dr. Ojoke, and Valerie Mills. Thank you, everyone. We couldn't have done this without the contribution of each of these people. And I want to thank the young men, Joshua Elbers and Albert Thompson, for a great job in putting all of these people, like just reaching out, and saying, okay, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? They both have a passion, and I would like for you to follow them on social media, Joshua Elbers, Albert Thompson. These are upcoming young men that we will all like, that I think we should all invest in, because I believe that they have a future. They're a crucial part of this conversation. If you can get many more of them thinking this way, thinking of solutions rather than causing problems, I think this nation and the entire world will be in a better place. Again, I want to really, really appreciate all the panelists. Please, we're going to still be here for like 2 or 3 minutes, so you can drop your information, your books, your resources, your website. And if I get any information from anyone that wants to reach out directly to you, I would ask for your permission to give them your information. But in the meantime, you can put your website, Brothers Making Moves, Gideon's Promise, H2H, Attorney Lawrence Lewis PC. Please put your information on the chat and send it to everyone. And then people can take it from there. If they're interested. Again, thank you. It's been a wonderful discussion. I look forward to collaborating with you on many more events, maybe on Zoom or maybe out in the community when coronavirus is out of the way. Thank you and have a great evening. God bless you. We're still here, but we'll be wrapping up. So if you want to talk with people informally here, that's allowed,
Listen, Dr. Gway, anytime you call, I'm coming. Coach D, Professor Rapping, anytime you call, I'm coming.
Absolutely, brother. Listen,
Yeah,
I'm gonna absolutely, once we get back face to face, you expect a call from me, man. I'm gonna get all your digits and your math from Joshua.
Yeah, and Joshua will tell you, don't schedule anything on a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, because I'm probably on trial. Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
All right, no doubt, my brother. It's a blessing. Hey, brother Rapping, man, is great hearing you and what you're doing, man. And just look for us to connect again. Let's do this again.
Please do. I look forward to connecting with all of you. This has really been a great experience. Thank you. And you can get my info from Josh, or if you can remember, it's John, Jon, at gideonspromise.org.
Got it.
But reach out. I'd love to stay connected to all you guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys. Peace. Good work, guys.
I'll talk to you, brother.
Yes, sir. For sure. All right, guys. Peace.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Albert.
You all. This is great.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Elizabeth, Jackson, Deborah, King's Court, Elaine, Cola, Favored, Cindy. Thank you all. We appreciate you spending your afternoon with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Funke. Thank you, Stella.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Redmi. Thank you, BL.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Bola. That was good.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you, Staten, Robert, Rose, Marilyn, Sadio, Denise, Tom, Fernanda. Thank you, everyone. Hey, Ayo. Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't
how
know
are
you
you?
were here. All the way from
Uh,
Nigeria. Thank you.
I've been part of it.
Thank
Okay,
you. Thank you so
great.
much.
Yeah, that's good. Well done.
Thank you.
That's a good one.
Thank you so much.
Great. Okay.
I had
So
another
there,
person that joined from the UK. Ukeria, I don't know if she's still online. She messaged me. Ukeria Henson, thank you for joining.
great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.
Some of my teammates want to stay back and chat. That's okay if you want to stay back and chat. That's okay. Oluke, what you got to say?
I was actually asking a question. I don't really have anything to say.
Oh, okay.
I was asking if you staying on to chat, but if not,
you know, they're always the last set of people to go, like me, you know. Or if something just occurred to somebody and wait, I want to ask you this, you know. We're not going to shut it down while our guests are still here. So I'm still here.
all right. Sister Bolatu is still here. That was good. Thank God. It really went well.
Thank you. So I think the media people are shutting it down now.
All right, then. I'll see you on another.
Bye, everybody. See you some other time.
This is Ade. It was great.
Thank you, Ade.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thank you.
Ade, I didn't see your face.
I didn't want to put my face. I'm still in my pajamas.
Okay. So what did you post as your name?
Bo, we have the same name, remember?
Oh,
Bo.
Oh yeah. I'm warning you.
I'm borrowing the names now. But it was awesome. It was great. So
I'm trying to make sure that I capture all the information before you shut down. So that's what I'm doing. I'm scrolling through.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay. Oh, that was a great one.
It was. Vibrant discussion.
So Antivala, I guess we'll have a in-house discussion sometime later. I know there's still some.
Oh yes, sure.
There's still some.
We're gonna have a follow-up.
Yeah, debrief.
There's some non-PRI members on, so it won't be
Yeah,
okay for
we'll have a
discussion.
debrief. We'll probably have a meeting for Tuesday night, Monday or Tuesday night.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Peace out.
Ade,
peace out.
You look so foreign doing that. tell the young people to show you how to do that naturally.
You'll be able to do that.
It seemed like a peak.
I'm old school.
I mean, yeah. All right.
All right, bye.
Shut down.
Okay. Okay, I'll text him.